to VOICE.
From the main stage to our breakout sessions to the expo hall, I think we had more than 500 companies speaking at this conference. It has become the place where the global voice-first communities are coming together.
There's just so many affordances that speech give us. It's the first time in my life that my kids are just as excited and up to speed on the tech as my parents, right?
This would reduce your balance to about $15,000.
That is the experience you want to have when you introduce conversational AI.
2019 sales to date are up 2.1%.
How do you use voice and empathy and build that into an experience that's going to work in a healthcare context from people who are developing gaming applications, and we learn from that. So the cross-industry pollination, very important and very helpful for us.
Coming back 1 year later and seeing how much this conference has grown, how many more women, frankly, I'm seeing in the space, has been really impactful to me personally. I think very valuable for Boom as a company to find so many great people to meet and potentially partner with.
The talent now better understand what it is that they need to do and how they can participate in this new world of voice first and AI.
The world is changing so fast. Voice, like augmented reality, virtual reality, this is going to be huge.
This is the inaugural Voice Summit Awards. This community is innovating at a pace that I don't think any industry has ever seen before. I want us to all give a round of applause for the people in this room that are changing the world.
The thing I love most is watching all the connections, all the smiles, seeing all the tweets of people having a great time together.
My definition of voice is the ability to empower others. It's time to take this to another level where you and I can make an even bigger impact.
To the 5,000 people that came from more than 26 countries, 5 continents, every state in this union, from me to you, thank you very much.
Do you feel deeply connected with the other people that help you thrive? 30 years ago, the World Wide Web connected us in a new and profound way. What comes next will help you thrive with greater connection. And all you need is the voice you already have. Voice is the easiest way to create and monetize content at scale. Your productivity will skyrocket as you get things done at the speed of speech. Voice technology as your new operating system gives you and every other living human greater control over your own destiny. Visit attn.live now to create your own connected and abundant future.
Welcome to VOICE.
From the main stage to our breakout sessions to the expo hall, I think we had more than 500 companies speaking at this conference. It has become the place where the global voice-first communities are coming together.
There's just so many affordances that speech give us. It's the first time in my life that my kids are just as excited and up to speed on the tech as my parents, right?
This would reduce your balance to about $15,000.
That is the experience you want to have when you introduce conversational AI.
2019 sales to date are up 2.1%.
How do you use voice and empathy and build that into an experience that's going to work in a healthcare context from people who are developing gaming applications, and we learn from that. So the cross-industry pollination, very important and very helpful for us.
Coming back 1 year later and seeing how much this conference has grown, how many more women, frankly, I'm seeing in the space, has been really impactful to me personally. I think very valuable for Boom as a company to find so many great people to meet and potentially partner with.
The talent now better understand what it is that they need to do and how they can participate in this new world of voice first and AI.
The world is changing so fast. Voice, like augmented reality, virtual reality, this is going to be huge.
This is the inaugural VOICE Summit Awards. This community is innovating at a pace that I don't think any industry has ever seen before. I want us to all give a round of applause for the people in this room that are changing the world.
The thing I love most is watching all the connections, all the smiles, seeing all the tweets of people having a great time together.
My definition of voice is the ability to empower others. It's time to take this to another level where you and I can make an even bigger impact.
To the 5,000 people that came from more than 26 countries, 5 continents, every state in this union, from me to you, thank you very much.
Do you feel deeply connected with the other people that help you thrive? 30 years ago, the World Wide Web connected us in a new and profound way. What comes next will help you thrive with greater connection. And all you need is the voice you already have. Voice is the easiest way to create and monetize content at scale. Your productivity will skyrocket as you get things done at the speed of speech. Voice technology as your new operating system gives you and every other living human greater control over your own destiny. Visit attn.live now to create your own connected and abundant future.
You ready? Welcome to VOICE.
From the main stage to our breakout sessions to the expo hall, I think we had more than 500 companies speaking at this conference. It has become the place where the global voice-first communities are coming together.
There's just so many affordances that speech give us. It's the first time in my life that my kids are just as excited and up to speed on the tech as my parents, right?
This would reduce your balance to about $15,000.
That is the experience you want to have when you introduce conversational AI.
2019 sales to date are up 2.1%.
How do you use voice and empathy and build that into an experience that's going to work in a healthcare context from people who are developing gaming applications, and we learn from that. So the cross-industry pollination, very important and very helpful for us.
Coming back 1 year later and seeing how much this conference has grown, how many more women, frankly, I'm seeing in the space, has been really impactful to me personally. I think very valuable for Boom as a company to find so many great people to meet and potentially partner with.
The talent now better understand what it is that they need to do and how they can participate in this new world of voice first and AI.
The world is changing so fast. Voice, like augmented reality, virtual reality, this is going to be huge.
This is the inaugural VOICE Summit Awards. This community is innovating at a pace that I don't think any industry has ever seen before. I want us to all give a round of applause for the people in this room that are changing the world.
The thing I love most is watching all the connections, all the smiles, seeing all the tweets of people having a great time together.
My definition of voice is the ability to empower others. It's time to take this to another level where you and I can make an even bigger impact.
To the 5,000 people that came from more than 26 countries, 5 continents, every state in this union, from me to you, thank you very much. There are donuts, so if you're on the donut diet like me, there's more donuts, courtesy of our friends at Google. So our kickoff speaker after lunch, our keynote speaker, is David Isbitsky, and I'm fortunate to have known David for like the last 10 years, watched his transition from Microsoft to Amazon, part of the Kindle team. He started speaking at our conferences at Modev 10 years ago. We forged a great friendship through that time. It's been really fun for me to watch his career flourish. And a little bit of history, in 2015, when Amazon came out with Alexa kind of commercially, we got together and we threw a developer workshop together in Arlington, Virginia, the very first one for developers. And that sort of kicked this journey off for us. And it's been a real joy ever since. So I am really thrilled to announce our next speaker to get us going here, Mr. David Isbitsky. Let's give it up.
Thank you. How is everyone? How many people, this is like your 5th or more CES? I just said, okay, yeah, so it's me too. Man, I'm super happy to be here. Of course, it's CES, so I was already here. Pete was like, hey, can you come by? We're doing the first voice conference at CES, so I'm super excited about that. If this is the first time we're meeting, doesn't have to be the last. TheDaveDev.com is all my info. There's a podcast there. You can get my Twitter, LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to give you some background for voice. As Pete mentioned, I was part of the Kindle team. I did Fire TV. I've always loved tech gadgets. So I've always kind of I did that both at Microsoft and Amazon. And gosh, it was 2014 when I first started looking at this Echo speaker thing before we released it. And I've just seen that grown. In fact, I remember sitting around a table and we had 10 of these Alexa skills. And now we're at over 100,000. And I'm happy to announce another number. We're at over 500,000 developers building for Alexa. And that one's a special one for me because I was a coder. I joined Amazon as a coder too. Now I just pretend that I can still code. But I remember saying, what is a voice developer? I mean, some of you may have this in your own company, right? In 2014, I'm like, what is a voice developer? Is it mobile? Because that's what a lot of us thought. Is it Java? Because that's the only API that was available for Alexa back then. Or is it RESTful services? And in fact, what I've learned over this short 5-6 years is that it's really the person that's going to create this experience is a human being. And so we're learning to talk again. And sometimes development teams asking them to go ahead and build for voice is like asking them to put together a PowerPoint, right? It's this entirely different side of the brain. And in fact, if you study neuroscience, you'll find there's different things, right? So for example, there's a certain amount of information that we can pull through our consciousness. It's called the Shannon limit. You can only put so much data through any kind of communications channel. And that's why as human beings, we do things like, hey, what's the net, right? What's the best out of 10? Or just tell me the top 3. We don't need specific pieces of data. And our entire tech industry has always been about that. Right? Through my career, I would go to companies, and I have the ability now to go and talk to major brands about their customers and how they want to talk to them. And I would go and I'd say, hey, you're talking to your existing customer. Why don't you go ahead and learn this entirely new API and platform, whether it's mobile or cloud, that we've created here in Silicon Valley. We want you to go learn it so you can talk to your customers again. Right? How many people went through that kind of loop? This is the first time that I can remember in my career where it's not changing that. In fact, it's opening up doors to talk to customers that you may not have been able to in mobile. My parents are just as excited about Alexa and voice as my kids. So what does that demographic mean? What does it mean when you can talk to your customers that aren't 18 to 34 every day in the moment where they are? You're not sending them an email survey 24 hours later because they called a phone line. And so that is just what I want you to think about today. If you're just starting to begin into the space, is how do you talk to your customers in the moment? This doesn't just apply to Amazon, it's this entire space. And that is what's truly got me excited. Here's just some other numbers that we've released. So I want to just share some of it. And it's near and dear to me because I remember it was one country, 10 skills, and I was trying to get the first developer. And some of those first developers were, Pete said, in 2015. So we are now at hundreds of millions of Alexa-enabled devices. Customers interact with Alexa billions of times each week. Alexa engagement has quadrupled over the last 2 years. And there's now over 100,000 smart home products from 9,500 unique brands. I remember CES 2015 walking around, and if I saw a Works with Alexa logo, I got all excited and I took a picture and tweeted it out. And now you just see that. And the way that I like to explain this is think of voice as the new HTML. It's not the channel itself. What it is a way for everyone to communicate with all the things in your life, whether that's your car, a piece of technology, or each other. Just the way the web brought us together and we could communicate, voice is going to do that, and nothing is simpler. So one of the things that we've seen at Amazon, you may have seen this if you've built Alexa skills too, is you can have daily touch points with customers when you're using voice. So this is certainly true for me. In the morning, I'm getting weather. I also ask for my flash briefing, which are very popular with customers, so you can get news. I get like tech news plus regular news. Maybe you want to listen to music at lunch. You come home, my kids are using and asking questions for homework, and they're also playing music. Or maybe you're setting timers while you're going ahead and cooking the evening meal. So these are daily, consistent touch points throughout the day for specific tasks that you can go ahead and integrate in, which is very different than mobile, right? What are some of the statistics I've seen? Like all of us probably touch our phones and are interacting with it like 45 times a day. Right? And I think that's probably a low number. So this is very, very different. It's having a conversation in the moment. It's spontaneous. And in fact, nothing is faster. And so there are certain types of things you need to think about of what works in voice, because what works in voice doesn't always work in mobile. You know, as a developer, I started out, I was coding on Commodore like in the 80s. And we've had like 30 years of building UI interfaces, right? We've got ways to show information through tabs and collapse things down. So if you're creating the ability to search through a whole bunch of information with voice, that's going to not be the best experience, right? Because there's, again, the Shannon limit. Just give me the best one. Just what's the gist, right? What's on sale? So browsing, not that good. Let's say I want to look for running shoes. Searching, what are the best running shoes for less than 50 bucks? There you go. Or how about a transaction? Order those pair of running shoes that reorder those pair of running shoes that I ordered 6 months ago. very fast, right? Whether it's on mobile, in the car, on your device, voice, nothing is faster. And so you'll see more of these. A lot of you may have done this, like ask the weather, will it rain today? It also changes over time. Think about this. If you've been doing tech for a while, every one of your customers today has the latest version of the OS and the most updated app when it comes to having a conversation. We've never had that, right? So it has the deployability and management of the web, but the discoverability and ease of use of mobile. And so things change over time. Alexa uses deep learning. And so if I said, and my kids were playing this for a while, if I said something like, what song goes like Old Town Road, that meant nothing 5 years ago. But that means entirely something different today, and what happens to be a top song. That happens automatically when you're talking with your customers. So when they have a question, it's not you that has to update how your mobile app works. And in fact, everybody here know like Myers-Briggs personality types? Or the 5 core personality traits? So how about having an experience where you can have ambiguity for someone that is fine with that, but then afterwards shoot them an email for somebody who needs a list of all the data, right? It's no longer one size fits all. So it's task completion, transactional entities, and then understanding. What if I say something like, how am I doing? Which, by the way, is something that happened when Capital One released their skill. People actually asked this question. When we launched Alexa, people would say things like, Alexa, I love you. How do you respond to that? Or how do you respond to, Alexa, I'm feeling depressed? And there are actually answers for that now. So it's human beings interacting and having real conversations with technology in ways that we haven't before. And so this is context across turns. If we have been talking, like Pete mentioned, we've known each other for a decade, I'm not going to ask Pete how old his kids are or where he lives. You're building upon experiences over time. So you have the ability to start small and then increase those experiences. It's funny, with the Dunkin' Donuts in the back, and I grew up in Jersey, so I was always hitting Dunkin'. I'll just give you some examples of this. Like Dunkin' Donuts, 50% of customers who go and use the Alexa skill complete an order. And in fact, a third of customers come back and complete multiple orders. And I do this for Domino's too. I order easy order. So it's just this context across turns, just naturally learning. It's multimodal. So if I'm doing something in the car, I could say, Alexa, order a pizza, and it'll be there when I get home, right? Or I could say, turn the AC down while I'm in the car. And it evolves across all of these different contexts. It's very personal. So we have something called Alexa personalization, where Alexa just knows my voice. So when I ask for top hits, or I'm trying to get something on sale, it knows it's Dave and that it's not my kids. So you have that ability. And then gender and age. You know, my dad, he's been having some medical issues. He's older, and I was with him at the doctor's office, and the doctor came in. The doctor's older than me, and he turned to me and said, he kind of looks young for a doctor. And I'm like, Dad, he's in his 50s. But you know, it's gender and age. What do you feel comfortable with? Do you want to talk with someone who is older, someone who's younger? And in fact, with Alexa, you can say, speak slower. Speak faster, right? So that, again, it's very, very personal. It gives us that connection in ways that we haven't had before. There was a breakthrough, some of you may not know this, right around 2016, where we were looking at neural networks and the ability to generate speech. And the way that speech works is there's a prosody and a speed and a tone. And the way that we've done it in the past is we've just recorded neutral speech, and as human beings, we were forgiving. We said, that's good enough. It's not too excited, it's not too sad, it's not happy, it's just good enough, it's neutral. Well, now through neural TTS, and you'll see this not just across Alexa, but the whole industry, voices are sounding closer to being very, very human. Now, you can still do, through the math, you can still do and detect that that's been a generated voice. But what it does is it gives us more personalization and connection. In fact, Samuel Jackson is now the voice of Alexa. So if you say, Alexa, talk to Sam, or Alexa, ask Sam for the weather, you will hear, and it blew my kids away when he was talking about the weather in our hometown and he actually said it, you know, and I was like, yeah, I know Sam Jackson, you know. But just think about that in the future. If you have a brand, why not create a persona and have that voice? And in fact, we have a technology through AWS called Poly, which gives you numerous amounts of voices across all different accents that you can just integrate and have conversations with your customer. And so you're seeing more and more of this innovation in Alexa to help customers multilingual, so the ability to switch between English and Spanish on the fly, Hindi and English too. Customer tone, so it's very different if I say Alexa stop or I go Alexa shut up, right? Being able to detect that tone. And then hunches, it's like, Dave, I noticed every morning you're asking me for directions to work and weather. Why don't I just create a routine? And then the routine can also control smart home, so we'll go make some coffee. Just doing that over time becomes very, very personable. It's knowing you. Or Alexa, what did you hear? You can do this now. Or why did you do that, right? So if I go ahead and play a song and it's a different song, the ability to just understand. And I love this one. If you have an Alexa device with a camera, you can say, Alexa, identify this. Somebody like my mom who is having lower vision, the ability to just hold up her vitamins and say, identify this, it can say that's actually the right bottle. And so it's moving to conversations versus these interactions, right? You think about mobile, we've been doing simple instructions, simple turns. Multi-turn conversations have happened now with voice and Alexa, and you see other kind of assistants. But what we need to be as human beings is in this ambiguous session reasoning, right? That's where we all live. And how do we get AI to that point? And we've been focusing on that at Amazon. You'll see we've released things like Alexa connections, which gives the ability for one skill to call out to another skill. So for example, if I'm using all recipes and I want to print it, I'll just print to my printer, right? The ability to kind of integrate. And so let's think about customers' latent goals. As a human being, if we all want to go out later, and Vegas, so that could be anything, right? But if we want to have a night out, what does that mean? Now, I say as a human being, night out, let's say if I want to go see a movie. So in the way that this works now is we would have the ability to say, I want a night out, you do an invocation and you get back some data. What we're doing through deep learning and now a cross-skill action predictor is that it will figure out what you need. So if you are a company that does car sharing or you're a company that books movie tickets, you're not just getting called directly from your customers through the mobile app, but you're getting called by an AI who now sees the interactions that when people say they want to go out at night, they want to book a movie ticket. And we think over time, we're just using this as an example, but we think over time, customers are going to come up with all sorts of scenarios to be able to handle this. And we're calling this Alexa Conversations. So it's applying AI and taking all of those different 100,000 plus skills that you see and interacting so that we can just have a conversation as a human being. And so I want you to walk away here as you're going across the CES floor and you're having conversations this week. If you're going and you want to build an experience for your customers in the future, don't limit that customer to the person on the right. In a world of voice that's personal and inclusive, your biggest customer may be the person on the left. You can have conversations whenever, however, for everyone. Meet your customer in the moment. And the conversation, it never has to end. Thank you. And so I am going to bring up Mark and from XMOS. You guys don't get rid of me yet.
Should I sit here?
Wherever you want, yeah.
That's probably fine.
We're so close together.
Yeah, I can put my hand on your knee.
All right, so XMOS is doing some pretty cool stuff at CES. Has anybody heard of XMOS or is familiar with their offerings? Okay, so this will be great for you to kind of explain your background and what you guys are doing at CES and what you see with voice.
Sure. So we are actually a semiconductor company originally. We spun out of the University of Bristol back in 2005, 2006. And our original thesis for building the company was to build technology that consumer electronics designers could use to create something quite special. Our observation was that most of the products that were available to consumer electronics designers were reference designs. They had to just recreate what the semiconductor company envisioned as the right product, and consequently they were just building the same products as their competitors, and they were competing on cost. So we spun out a semiconductor company to solve that problem on behalf of the embedded world. Quite rapidly, we became a vendor of audio solutions. So Apple stopped putting FireWire into their MacBooks, And the Apple ecosystem didn't have a solution, so we used our own technology to create an audio solution for that. And after 2 or 3 years, we were renowned as one of the highest quality audio vendors in the semiconductor world. Along that route, we developed our architecture, our underlying platform, added a lot of DSP capability. And in 2016, we actually had a couple of design-ins in the Sony Xperia Agent. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a sort of a companionship robot. The original Baidu DuerOS robot had XMOS technology inside it. And this was just using our original audio technology, nothing specific about voice. And eventually we observed that happening, and then Alexa was launched. And you may not remember this, but you were the first person I contacted when Alexa was launched.
Oh, my apologies.
I found your name, and I contacted you, and you very kindly pointed me in the right direction. And our relationship with Amazon, yeah, well done. Our relationship with Amazon actually started in January 2016.
Yeah.
And
just some background for the audience. How many people here have an embedded product or some type of consumer electronic that you actually built? Okay. And so, well, we see some hands in the back, some up here. What we saw in, so it was June 2015. Not only did we launch this Alexa Skills API, but we also launched something called the Alexa Voice Service. So the idea was, Alexa is in these products that Amazon builds that we sell to customers called Echo. But customers are going to want Alexa anywhere, right? It could be in a speaker, and there's been stuff at CES, you've probably seen like refrigerators, right? All over the place. And we weren't going to build that. We needed to make that available to anyone for free. And so we called that the Alexa Voice Service. And the idea being that if you're creating a consumer electronic piece and we're moving into this voice-driven world, then you're going to have a disadvantage when you're trying to sell something because people are going to talk to it. How many people are in their hotel trying to talk to an assistant, whether it's an Alexa or not, right? Something goes up. The way that our brains work is we actually build these neural pathways. So the expectation, just like if we have a piece of glass in front of us now on a technology, we expect to touch it. We expect to be able to talk to the technology in our lives. And what was, right away, what we saw from customers was, okay, well, how do I build something, one, that doesn't increase the cost of my product tenfold, right. Two, is actually reliable and easy to use for my customers so they can just talk. And so these kits started, and you all had one of those first kind where you could buy this embedded piece of electronics and put it in an existing
That's
product.
right. So if you go to our website right now, what you'll see is a number of different voice solutions. And essentially, our goal in life is, in an arbitrarily noisy environment, is to make the voice sound like you've got a microphone right here. Right. What we're doing, so that's the kind of the here and now, and we get a tremendous amount of support from Amazon. And actually, one of the things that the AVS team do, which obviously we benefit from, albeit indirectly, is to smooth the path in all of the other areas that need doing. Adding a voice interface to a category that previously didn't have a voice interface is non-trivial. There's a lot of thought that needs to go into it. You sort of need to step back and reconsider, in some cases, how the technology or how the user experience is managed. And Amazon have really blazed a trail through that. And we're focused now on smart TV set-top boxes, similar categories to the ones that where those user experiences have been properly thought through. And that really helps us to get to market quickly and sell chips, which is what we need to do to build a successful business. Nowadays, we're looking a little bit more at multimodal. It's interesting to see what you were saying about conversation, because one of the things that really interests me is what we need to do as a chip company that has to place long-term bets. What we need to do from a sensor processing perspective to identify conversations and to potentially identify opportunities to push information asynchronously into a space. So a voice-based push notification, if you like. So that whole conversational awareness thing, I think, is a fascinating area.
Yeah, and when it comes to voice, like the modality creates entirely different scenarios. So let me think. Like in the home, right? The first thing I would hear from, how many people here have an Echo? All right, how many people here have had an Echo for more than 2 years? Wow. How many people more than 4 years? Wow. Okay. So one of the very first things, I mean, this is going all the way back, I would hear from customers is, I don't know what I said, but it did it. I forgot how I asked for weather. Like you could say, what's the weather outside? Is it going to rain? Is it going to snow? You know, tell me that you just, and that's the way we are as human beings. And you can try and define that as a persona too, but the truth is, there's days that Dave is angry, there's days that Dave's depressed, and the way that I talk actually changes, right? Mm-hmm. And so you think the home, and what was remarkable for people, the magic was that Alexa heard them from across the room, right? And then how many people started getting multiple devices, and then you would say Alexa, and then they would all answer, right? And so suddenly we had this multi-device household, and that's a scenario you don't even think of in the beginning. And so we put technology in there called ESP, Ecospatial Perception. We're all sci-fi geeks. And it's basically the ability to figure out which signal is strongest, right? Which is probably something you've run into. But think about the car. I don't know about you, but my kids, even with headphones, are super loud. What about music playing? What about cars around you? And what about rain and the wiper blades? And so even with Echo Auto that we have, you can see the little holes. We have the same kind of beam microphone technology. And so that is, as you walk across modalities, what does it mean to have voice interaction in a hospital, in a closed home, in an automobile, or in an airplane, right? And that's definitely something where you guys have been looking into.
I think that's one of the, as is mentioned, our primary focus is on consumer, but one of the areas that we get pulled into is medical technology. And what's interesting now is the sort of crossover products that we're seeing where you're getting domestic health monitoring. So you're looking for, for example, for elderly relatives who might have fallen over, and you're trying to use multimodal sensors to fall detect, essentially. So you're listening to noises, and they're not voices, or they might be, but they might not be voices. And you're listening, and you're looking for indications that somebody's in distress and potentially has fallen over. And those crossover cases, I think, are really very interesting, and particularly because I think there's some alternative business models that are available for those kinds of products.
Oh yeah, I had, gosh, this is probably, it was one of my backgrounds on Twitter for a while. It was when we had like 20,000 skills. So I think it was 2016 or 20, like right before I went on stage, I got this email from someone that said, Alexa saved my dad's life. And he was 93, and he collapsed, and he said, Alexa, help, and he had, it saved his life. And they sent me pictures of him blowing out his 93rd birthday candles in cake. And I was like, wow, like there's something here, right? And there are services that do that on Alexa today where that morning routine I talked about, right? And my parents are older. My dad, he's turning 80 next month. I can do things like I'm making my coffee and I'm asking how my commute is and I'm asking for current news, but I can say, Alexa, how's dad? Alexa, how has dad been moving, right? Because that is actually an area of concern. Now, I'm not opening a mobile app. I'm not doing anything different. I'm hanging out with the family, but I also have the ability to just go and ask. And by the way, I've seen that work across enterprises too. So we have this thing called Alexa for Business, which can integrate with Active Directory or any of the other stuff out there. And you can set up personalities. So I could say, Alexa, how is the sales forecast for Mid-Atlantic District? Which some of you may have some of those things while you're making coffee, right? And so it's like what you say. Have you seen, is there anything like super interesting that you've come across that you didn't think about as you were building this and you're like, I've been building these devices for so long, but wow, voice really took and pivoted it in this kind of direction that I never thought I'd be working. I know for me, there are areas, I actually wound up in the Journal of Medicine talking to surgeons at Johns Hopkins, right, who were thinking about voice in the surgery and things like that, right? Have you had anything interesting like that?
So we've had a wide variety of things. One of the characteristics of the opportunities that we see in the last 12 months is the fragmentation, the diversity of things that are having voice interfaces put in them. I mean, the Shadecraft was a great example. That was one of the designs we were in 2 or 3 years ago. It's a voice-enabled sunshade.
Okay.
It's a very, very high-end design for high-end hotels.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're lying in your sun lounger, very close to my own heart, and you want your next gin and tonic, you know, so Alexa, can you bring me a gin and tonic, or can you ask somebody to bring me a gin and tonic? So I don't think that function appears yet. So that's I guess a trivial example, but. I think, you know, things like we're in a GE cooker hood that allows, basically coaches you through a cooking experience. And that's an area where your hands are busy, your eyes are typically busy, and voice really works in that case.
Right.
And so those are the things that we get excited about, because of course voice is going to be everywhere. At some point, as you say, it'll be like, you know, your 3-year-old will expect a voice interface. That's going to happen at some point in the future, but in order to really excite people and get people motivated about voice as a primary user interface, first of all, we've got to start with the things that deliver real utility. So my hands are dirty, I'm worried about germs, I'm not looking towards the device, or whatever it might be. Voice makes absolute sense in those cases, and that's where not only do we see the design activity, but we also see the volume, the sell-through.
And so you're launching a product with an Alexa in it. Where can people find more info, and what is that, the kind of scenario for that?
So we have, I mean, you can obviously come straight to the Exmos website, but we're also a part of your own AVS website. And I think one of the services that you provide is to help people who really don't know where to start. Right. So they can phone up, phone, call, email, Amazon, and just ask for guidance on which solution best fits that use case. We've got, I think, still the most qualified solutions in the Amazon AVS ecosystem. So hopefully you'll end up at Exmos, but there are alternatives, obviously, and that's the beginning of a journey, really, where the audio front end is part of that journey. But as I was saying, there's a lot of user interface considerations that need to take place to build a really successful product. And we'll be, as I say, there's plenty of work to be done on the front end. There's increasingly more types of sensors, increasingly more near sensor processing that needs to be done nowadays. A lot of that is using AI techniques to determine metadata, like somebody's fallen over.
Right.
So we're pretty busy in that space, but we need our customers to be successful in every area to get sell-through, to get a profitable situation for the ecosystem. Excellent.
And is there a area that people can check out here at CES for the audience?
We're actually in the Amazon area.
In the smart home, yeah. So that is in Venetian, level 2. Does anybody here go to AWS reInvent? Okay. How many people have deja vu, like walking around this? Yeah, exactly. I'm on autopilot so it's basically like you're at reInvent. And so in the Venetian, it's those main rooms on the right. You can walk in. There's actually a Lamborghini there now. So if you want the chance to sit in a Lamborghini, so when we announced that, I'm like, I'm not going to go tweet out like Alexa in Lamborghini, right? Like I drive an Accord. But it's cool that it's there, right? Across all different autos. So you'll see an automobile, you'll see Alexa in auto, you'll see stuff that Exmos is doing, and it's really about having voice anywhere that you all want. And I know you mentioned kids, right? And so my kids are older, 15 and 12. So they've like grown up in the touch generation, I call it, like the glass, they want to touch everything. But I do hear from parents all the time where there's like kids 5 and under that it's just talking to things, right? And some of you have probably, the running joke when my kids was little was they were tapping magazines, right, to go ahead and turn it. And I think now we're moving into that voice first world where there's going to be an expectation for that generation. So having partners like you building hardware that we can have a way for everybody to build a consumer device that you can talk to.
Very cool.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent job. Excellent job. Let's give it up. Mark, you're sticking around, right? Yeah. David, thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it. Great job. Let's bring up our panel. And our moderator, Joan, I guess you'll be at the podium. So Joan Salzman is a reporter for CNET. How many of you are familiar with CNET magazine? Probably one of the leaders in the technology space. They push out so much amazing content and reviews. So we're thrilled to have Joan here as our moderator, and she will introduce the panelists here momentarily. Let's give it up for our next panel. I'll just add, what Mark and David just talked about is really this. It's not just voice, it's an audio explosion. So that's really what this is about, is audio is making it into our lives in so many different ways. And the audio explosion and opportunities for customer engagement. And here we are. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to join our panel. We have a lineup of great experts. I'm going to run through the names of our panelists and give you a little information about them, and then dive into some questions. Well, we know Mark very well. Mark is CEO of XMOS. Next to him, we have Garrick Schmidt. He's Executive Vice President and Global Experience Director at Essence Global Limited, a global media agency. Amanda Abrams, she's Group Creative Director of Team One, the ad agency for Lexus. Regu, who gave me permission to not have to pronounce his last name. He's the VP of Software Engineering for Deutsche Telekom, just launched Europe's first smart speaker in September. Next to him, we have Jason Acker. So far, I'm doing good. Digital Director at Diageo, which if you've been at CES as long as I have, you've had some of their liquors so far. And then at the end, we have Ken Lagana, Executive Vice President of Digital Sales at Radio.com. So we're here to discuss the explosion in audio. And I thought it would be great for our panelists if we can just come up the line. What do you think is driving the explosion in audio? Ken, why don't you start?
Man, there are, I think, so many things. I'll throw, just a couple out. I think we've really become a binge-driven culture, and I think, what digital audio and the ability to, podcasting, for example, as an example, if you get hooked on a podcast and you're on season 3, you have the ability to listen to every one of those seasons and binge on that podcast in one sitting. I think on demand has become huge. Time shifted listening is massive in this space, and the technology hadn't existed before the last few years to listen to your favorite radio station or your favorite radio program that you might miss in the morning, but you can listen to it now in the afternoon. So that's, I think, fantastic. And then also, look, smart speakers, are clearly driving consumption. And, the last thing that I'll throw out, so I don't steal everybody's answers here, is, you're starting to see more and more cars on the road, and Amanda can probably speak to this, that have tech that enables, app-driven audio listening opportunities, and there's a point in time where people are starting to trade in their cars and trade up, and we're starting to hit critical mass there. So the ability to listen to time shifted and binge and all of those things and listen to digital audio is now. So a couple of thoughts.
Jason, is there anything he didn't say that you would add?
Did I take all your answers?
We're all done here. No, I think Ken's right. I think it comes down to the availability of listening to audio, right? There are so many different ways now, and it's so easy. Just look outside. Everyone's got their AirPods in their ears. There are voice assistants everywhere, whether it's your car, whether it's your watch, whether it's your phone. So the availability and the ease of access to audio is bigger than it's ever been. That's one. I think number two is content. I think the investment and reduction of content over the past 5 years has been a tremendous driver of the growth of audio. There's just so many different areas and verticals that people have access to now for either entertainment or utility or just plain information.
I mean, just think about how many TV shows, movies now are getting driven by podcasting. That hasn't happened before. So to your point, the content continues to scale and get better and better.
That's great.
Regu, you have a perspective on, to Jason's point, on availability of listening, of devices that you can listen to, being that it's a different market in Germany for smart speakers. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we at Deutsche Telekom, so we launched the first European smart speaker last year. And during that journey, to really bring the product out at a quality that customers would love to buy the product, we were facing a lot of issues when it came to the whole voice processing, right? I mean, that's at the end. I mean, when you talk to a speaker, and you would expect that to answer. It sounds so simple, but it's incredibly difficult to get that. And the problem starts early on, right? I mean, it starts from the audio front end. So it starts from the microphones. It starts from the digital signal processing that's on the devices, and that's exactly where we did some intense work together with XMOS, trying to fix all of that stuff. And end of the day, we launched the product. So it's out there. And what we're also seeing is that people are getting very accustomed to having multiple of these devices at home, right? So there's more and more of these devices getting in there, and people are really becoming very familiar and getting used to having these assistants around and having to talk to them and get their daily stuff done.
Amanda and Garrick, too, you guys both come to this from a storytelling perspective. What kind of storytelling formats are driving an audio explosion, do you see? Or what ways do you have to change the way that you tell stories as the method of audio delivery is changing?
Yeah, it's ironic that I'm on a panel about voice, but using it now.
That's ironic.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You do have to really think about the space that you're in and deliver the right kind of content for that space. What's amazing about it is that there's so many different types of content, and people are super hungry for it. People look to podcasts to be informative. They look to podcasts to be useful, to be entertaining. So there's such a wide variety, and in terms of having that visual element removed, it actually is kind of freeing creatively because it forces you to really dig in, get to the meat of the story, and tell something truly compelling and true and not rely on anything else, and give people back their imaginations to picture the things that you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it is the most personal relationship that you can have at the moment. For most people, they cannot successfully multitask and follow a story audibly while reading something. And so I think we just have to keep thinking about the context of that, and I think it challenges us from an advertising perspective, from a content creation perspective. I just think it's a whole new world, and I don't think we're going to be able to sort of rip and replace from what's been working in, say, terrestrial radio and then just drive it over. We have to think about it in new ways.
Mark, I know that this is a topic that you have some thoughts on. This situation of designing when you don't have a remote or a screen to lean on. What are some of your thoughts about how that's a different challenge and how XMOS addresses it?
I think, it is certainly a different challenge. It is a challenge. The first thing that I think you need to do is to just recognize that controlling something by voice requires a rethink of the way things have been done before. I think if you think you could, the best solution is to take a remote control and then create voice interfaces that are sort of volume up, volume down, channel 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're missing a huge opportunity. What we want to do is to say, I'd like to, stream season 3, episode 4 of House or something, and have your smart TV go and find that episode for you. And it may be that in the not too distant future, your smart TV can flip your user context. So it's actually, not only does it bring up House, but it also brings up the other things that you might be halfway through watching. So I think there's stepping back and reconsidering how users interact with some of this consumer electronics technology is necessary in order to deliver the best customer experience.
Right.
Yeah. And sorry,
please.
Adding to what Mark said, the mistake a lot of people do is they kind of take the existing navigational patterns and then try to implement voice interfaces with that, right? So whatever you would see on the desktop or on a mobile device or a mobile application, we need to really rethink how voice user interfaces can get somebody to do what they want, right? And that requires really a different kind of design philosophy that you should look at it from end to end.
And I also think, I think search, content discovery are still challenged, in this space. And although, you saw Google double down with Zach Renault and his team, a couple of years ago in terms of elevating the audio experience from a search perspective. I think that there's, and you see Spotify doing different things. We're doing different things on the radio.com platform to surface unique content based on listening environments and experiences. But it's still a challenge today, and it's something that we have to solve for, because we have all this fantastic content across the board that we just need better ways to surface it and make it more discoverable. So I think from a hardware standpoint and a even a software perspective, that's something we could use your help on, guys.
Sure. I'm sort of curious, Jason, just from a brand perspective, how are you thinking about it differently from an advertising perspective, from a brand building perspective?
Well, it's funny, you said something a minute ago about how it's it's very storytelling, and it's like a very personal sort of situation, right? And I think that's why brands are so attracted to it, because it's a medium still that's very much requires a lean in attitude, right? Because if you're listening to a podcast, you're listening to it for a reason. You want to actually hear, and I think that's why brands love it, because what we're seeing from like early tests is that brand awareness is actually, you could drive brand awareness, and you could drive brand equity through good creative in podcasts, right? So I think that's why brands are really flocking to the platforms. Where at the Agio, we're certainly thinking very much about the type of content we're putting out there on platforms, the type of creative that we're running. We're even starting to think now, and we haven't done this before, is what do our brands sound like? What is our sonic identity for our brands? We've spent so much time thinking about what our brands look like, and it's almost like a harken back to like the early days of radio. Like what is your consistency in audio? And that's what we're focusing a lot on now.
Yeah, and I think just from your standpoint, from your perspective, I mean, it's engagement versus interruption, right? I mean, historically, media has been about an interrupted experience, and in the podcast space, you have such a super engaged listener that sonic branding almost becomes more important than other types of branding, because you have somebody that's so focused on that content. So and then how you leverage your sonic brand across different audio platforms becomes super important.
Yeah, it's super relevant. It's super important to be relevant in that space. Yeah. So that people aren't just listening to you, they're actually hearing what you have to say. And one of the things Lexus is doing right now is partnering with Malcolm Gladwell to do a podcast series, because the Lexus design philosophy is based on studying people, how they tick, what motivates them, how they react to things. And that curiosity about people really aligns well with Malcolm Gladwell and the way he studies and observes the world. So knowing that, we don't want to go out into the podcast space and just talk about ourselves, but someone who's really like well-defined and has a huge following in that space for what he does, to be curious about us and study us and tell people the Lexus story in a way that interests him and interests his audience.
And I think, we talked about quality of content and where podcasting sort of started and how far it's come just in terms of quality of content, but even how brands, think about it and how they've, really jumped in with both feet. And Amanda, you can speak to this better than anybody. Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History. Any listeners, any followers out there? Malcolm, cool. Thank you. Keep listening. But when we struck that deal with Amanda and her team, Amanda spent a week in Japan with Malcolm Gladwell and literally got some amazing content that he's now, packaging up and reformulating to Gladwellize it, if you will. Is that a word? But that's the level of detail that we're starting to get into from a branded content perspective, and it's really moving the needle for big brands.
And it's great for us too, because it forces us to dig deep and really find those rich stories, rather than just relying on something that can quickly go into a 30-second ad. We're going to do a whole series telling the story of the brand.
Yeah. What I love about that example too is about thinking about it as you're distinctly thinking about how you're reaching people, and it's a bespoke approach. And so it's not, from a media perspective, we're always focused on context and how do we be relevant? How do we be most relevant? And I think it's really hard if you still take a one-to-many approach and you're just sort of fracturing it and sending it through the system. Yeah. And when you think about audio and what it allows, and also the cost of audio is comparison to video, to film, to cinema. Like it enables such a degree of freedom, and I think that is also why we're seeing such a renaissance with it as well. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that flexibility is huge. You're absolutely right. I mean, I lived in the video space for many years, and to do the kind of to create the kind of content that Amanda and her team worked with Malcolm and our team on, probably would have cost 5x if there was a video component to that.
And you're able to produce it lean, travel lean, and have this. You don't have a big crew to set up, and there's not much production on the back end to get it on air either. All of these things add to the accessibility for.
Yeah, and quick side note just on that, and we'll stop beating this dead horse for a second, but what's always amazing, and when you really think about what audio and voice and engagement really looks like in the podcast space and the audio space in general, these hosts, these DJs, these talk radio hosts, whoever it might be, they really have become social influencers in their own right. And I was talking to Malcolm last week, just catching up on how everything went when he was out there. And one of the stories that he told me, and you forget this, and these guys meaning the hosts forget this, but every once in a while somebody will come up to them, and this happened in Japan. Somebody, and I don't know if you were there when this happened, but some gentleman came up, younger gentleman came up to Malcolm, and just started talking to him as if he's known him for like 100 years, like he was his best friend. And I think that's the power that I think audio can really drive, is that one-to-one connection and that engagement, because you actually start to feel like you know these people. It's crazy. And you hear podcast hosts and talk radio hosts and DJs talk about that all the time. Sometimes we forget about that connection.
It comes across as much more authentic when the host is reading. You get the sense, especially in podcasts, because it is so personal, that they actually do believe in the product that they're talking about. And we're seeing that also in the early testing that we're doing, that the host reads are way more impactful than a mid-roll spot or something like that.
And it also becomes unskippable in a way.
Yes.
Or less likely to skip, less likely to hit the button, because it becomes part of, and not only do you have that affection, but it also becomes incredibly difficult to decide to interrupt yourself, and then try to find yourself back in it. And I think, one of the responsibilities we have, like when we think about all this, is like, how do we actually create these things that are in many ways unskippable, that are so compelling that you want to keep going through it? Because it is not yes, it's easy to hit the button to some extent, but it's also sort of a pain at the same time. And if we can take all that friction out by just putting compelling content out there from a brand perspective, from an advertiser's perspective, that actually marries the content, I think you'll see it further sort of accelerate as opposed to decline.
So as you're building audio experiences, audio interfaces, and I'd like to hear Jason address this first if you could, how are you balancing utility and entertainment? You had, Jason with Yadra, you guys had a skill that addressed it in an interesting way.
Yeah, so we had built a skill first on Amazon around trying to balance the utility of what people are looking for from a beverage alcohol company, which is primarily around cocktail recipes and how to serve, what to gift, where to find a bar, where to find a liquor store or a retailer that sells our products. That's sort of like brass tacks, right? We do that in search, we do that on the happy hour skill. We wanted something a little bit different than to break through the clutter, because frankly there's a lot of cocktail recipe skills out there. We tried to provide an experience for in-home around party games or little tidbits and little facts, perhaps using some of our celebrity influencer voices within the skill itself. What we found, quite frankly, is that the utility was the most used aspect of it, and maybe we just haven't gotten the entertainment aspect of it right yet. There is something there, and I think as the technology continues to progress and you're able to use real voices within the devices, I think that will become sort of a bigger opportunity for us. But we found that the utility aspect for us was bigger. The biggest challenge we have is scaling these things, as there's so many different skills, and it's very hard to break through the clutter with these.
What was that
skills.
one app that you guys created? Was it the bartender app, where you could create the liquor, a drink based on the liquor you had in your house or something like that?
Oh yeah, the bar.com. Essentially, we had a device on the website, essentially, like if you have this, if you have whiskey, if you have Johnny Walker, here's what you can create in your home. But so we sort of tried to replicate that through the skill.
Right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I thought that was really unique.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, a discussion of breaking through the clutter leads to a discussion of measurement and what we know about the things people are getting to actually hear on these devices. We've got a lot of people from the creator side, storytelling side, and also some people from the hardware side. Does anyone want to take a swing at that about what's lacking in terms of measurement? How hardware is going to start to be able maybe to deliver on that?
Well, I mean, I can jump in. I mean, I think there is a relative misnomer that in audio that especially in things like podcasting, that it's not measurable. And today, we actually have the ability to target demographics and psychographics across our podcast platform. You can geo-target. We actually can do things like real attribution. We have the ability to onboard first-party data, which is what every advertiser is looking for today. And you can either suppress certain segments or deliver custom messages to people that you're looking to speak to differently as a brand. So, look, I think that it's here and it's only getting better, frankly. I think that's the good news.
Yeah, there's what can be done and there's what should be done.
Right.
I think certainly it's possible to measure whether there's somebody in the room. So if you're playing your podcast to an empty room, you might want to know that. You might also want to know whether somebody appears to be distracted, but there's big privacy issues around that. So, and one of the things quite interesting about maintaining and obviously trying to enhance your brand equity is you're trusting the provider of the audio interface, be it the input interface and the voice that you hear when you first say Alexa, and in the future you'll be trusting that entity potentially with push notifications to proactively advertise your content, and the implications of getting that wrong, of being an annoying interruption, which is actually very difficult for us to ignore. It's easy for us to filter through peripheral vision, visual clutter, but actually voice-based clutter interruptions are very difficult and very annoying. So there's a lot of trust that needs to go into the device at the end that is responsible for picking that moment for delivering that message, and that's based on there is a hardware component to that because the hardware needs to identify the audio context. Is it an appropriate time? Is it not an appropriate time? And if it is appropriate, then to deliver. So I think there's definitely a chain of technologies, a chain of things that need to be done there.
Raghu, you have an interesting perspective on the consumer comfort level with privacy.
So I think, from a hardware and software point of view, you can measure a lot of things, you can log a lot of things, and like what Mark said, data privacy, that's going to play a big role. Yeah. Especially when we brought the speaker out to the market in Europe, in Germany, which is a very highly privacy conscious country, there was a lot of things that we had to do to build privacy into the device, right? So starting from the button that allows you to stop the speaker from listening to it. It's actually a hardware button, so it's not even a software switch. So that's the kind of things that we did to increase the trust customers would have on the whole privacy aspect. Because I think someone today morning was most likely Brett, who said that he doesn't think of privacy as a big thing when it comes to voice. I disagree with that. I think privacy plays a big role. Data privacy and protection plays a big role on how people perceive voice assistants, especially with all those scandals that recently around, who's listening to your data to do machine learning and all of that stuff. So that really makes it, a hot topic. And I think the people who are building these products, so the hardware, software, we really have a responsibility to keep that privacy aspect in mind when we are building those stuff.
Well, let's talk about the levels of commitment you have to dedicate to an audio product well in advance to actually make it successful. It seems like you have to put in more time, more investment, more dollars into making something that's going to work well in an environment where everything's changing rapidly. Garrick, is that something that
I think it's an awesome question. Where I was going to go on the measurement one, which I think is, but it goes right into it. I think we have to acknowledge that it's a new space, Like for most, even though, yes, audio has existed forever, but it is a relatively new space. And I think from when I think about it from a brand, like a media perspective, it's not yet super easy to figure out how to go across. I mean, I don't know how many podcasts there are, hundreds of thousands.
There's
beyond.
I think over 800,000.
800,000. Yeah. Like, and it's but you can't sit here today, from a brand perspective, and say like, yes, I want to get all sports and I want to lock it in. Like you can't do it that way. And so I think you have to, we have to A, acknowledge that, but B, we also have to make the commitment that there's so much opportunity. And, in some of the studies that I have seen, let alone like beyond just what we've experienced on behalf of our clients, is that, we're really concerned about how effective is advertising with those audiences. And people are way more receptive to it, significantly more receptive to it, partially because it's new, but partially because it's intimate and they have undivided attention. I think Netflix had that classic comment when they said their only competition is sleep. And I think in many ways, audio starts to capture that other part. We're a culture, a global culture that's always in motion, and audio taps into it. So, but I do think you have to be committed to it. But I also think you can't expect it to be just like the other formats instantaneously.
And sorry, go ahead. Did you have something to add?
No, I was just going to say, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's when you think about, and I'll just talk about podcasting. Podcasting was built on the backs of direct response advertising, so and they haven't gone away. Direct to consumer brands are all over podcasting because of one thing: it works. I mean, it really works. And I think there's a stat that I saw that said something like 70% of people bought something based on a podcast ad that they listened to. So I think the good news is that we feel really good that it's working, and now that brands are really moving into the space, there's an opportunity to figure out how the brand side can complement, a DR angle,
What are the breakthroughs that need to happen to make that possible? What are the things that are lacking to be able to really mobilize on that?
I mean, I think from my perspective, just not to beat measurement to death. I think there is a lot of work to be done there for brands to for
that much.
There's for radio.com to start to see the big brand dollars that TV's getting. You're going to have to start to understand total reach across all audio platforms. We're going to have to understand when people are skipping our ads. I think it's going to get there, and we're going to continue to test, but it's going to get to a point where we're not going to be able to scale because I can't go to my CMO and with like, I think it worked. They got a little bit of a lift, so it's going to it'll get there. Like,
but that's the age-old challenge in every medium, right? I mean, it's like, how do I know that, in television that I'm unduplicating on OTT and SVOD and all of those other platforms.
100%. I mean, so much of this is so nascent right now still, but but I think good marketers will continue to test and learn and scale just like any other channel.
I think the upper hand that audio has, frankly, than other platforms is it's relatively contained versus where video has become an unleashed beast across every single platform, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's more containable in audio. So I think we're going to get there more quickly than maybe our video brethren.
Yeah, I think that's probably right because it is focused. You're right there. Yeah.
Well, in the time we have left, which is we're almost out of time, shockingly. We started out talking about what's driving audio explosion today. I'm curious what you think is going to be driving it tomorrow. Ken, when I talked to you before, you brought up, voice-activated wall planes. Like, is that something that's going to be driving the explosion of audio? And if not, what do you think it's going to be in 20 seconds or less?
I think that content, it's really all about, content and, the fact that, this is a screenless world, a screenless environment, the world of audio is, we love that. We need to lean into that utility And where we excel is in people's personal time, the space when they're walking their dog in the morning before they go to work, when they're working out, when they're walking on the beach, when they're hiking. So I think as the content continues to get better and better, there's more access points across the ecosystem. That's not going away. That's only increasing. The only place to go is up here for us.
That's great. It was not 20 seconds or less, so penalized. Jason, what do you think is going to be driving audio explosion? Is anything going to be changing that drives it?
I mean, I think just the technology itself, the fact that 5G is becoming more scalable, so there'll be just more access for people to listen to audio and bigger. I also think the talent that's coming into the space is pretty amazing. Like A-list Hollywood talent are now building tremendous slates of audio content.
Yeah, 5G is a massive piece of this we didn't talk about.
You've had your time, Ken. We're moving on to Reagan. What do you think? The explosion of audio.
So I think technology definitely,
yeah.
and also the consumption that's going to drive that as well.
Amanda, do you have a thought?
He was way shorter than 20. Yes, entertainment is going to continue to grow, but also usefulness. I think brands finding and building and making skills that are easy and useful to people will be the next big place that we go, and understanding where people are listening to audio. There's so many opportunities within a vehicle, just a vehicle alone, of understanding when someone's on their commute to work, how long that is, the mood they're in, and catering what they're hearing to those sentiments.
Garrett, what do you think?
I would just say talent is coming. I think, you guys talked about Malcolm Gladwell, who's a big name, but I mean, they're much bigger, like, Hollywood names, music names, and I think the more that they come, the more it will grow.
And Mark, what do you say?
So maybe we talked a lot about content, but in terms of voice interfaces, I think they're just going to become, over the next few years, significantly more accessible from an economical perspective, so they'll just proliferate everywhere. And I think the difference between a 95% and success rate on word recognition and a 97% success rate is huge for the user experience. It doesn't sound like much, but it's a really huge difference. It's quite an interesting exercise to go and cross out words in a book, 3 and 100, and see whether you can still understand what's going on. That's happening over time, because obviously these machine learning algorithms are learning all the time. So we're going to get very much more accessible hardware, very much more accessible, economically accessible voice interfaces, and they will become more effective. And I think that's going to be a game changer.
Thank you, panelists, and thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Joan. Thank all of our speakers, our panelists. Thank you so much. Go ahead and exit right down here. Be sure and get your parting gifts. Thanks for being a part of this. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Introducing Ian with Attention Live. And Ian, please tell me what makes you so excited to be here today.
Yeah, well, I love CES. I have a lot of friends here. It's nice that this time I am co-producing a live stream for the big voice event. Google Assistant is the sponsor for that, so that'll be a blast. And so that brings me here. Yeah. Spending time with you and the rest of the Runway Innovation team brings me here. I have a bunch of friends in the blockchain distributed ledger space I'm spending time with, and connecting, building strategic partnerships. So it's exciting what we're building at Attention Live, and being here is one place in 1 week that I can get a few years of work done.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about seeing? Whom, what technology?
I'm probably most excited about seeing young people, like 18, give or take 5 years, that are actively building out voice technology, especially if this young person has big ambition, like building tech that can reach hundreds of millions of people. That would be most exciting for me, because for me, the youth are not the future, the youth are the present, and I am very much wanting to support them and serve them and empower them.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that.
Yes. It's so fun to do live streaming on the strip next to the fountain. That's nice, you just spontaneously laugh.
That's right. Spontaneous.
We are out of here. Thanks for joining us. We're done.
You ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Welcome to Voice.
From the main stage to our breakout sessions to the expo hall, I think we had more than 500 companies speaking at this conference. It has become the place where the global voice-first communities are coming together.
There's just so many affordances that speech give us. It's the first time in my life that my kids are just as excited and up to speed on the tech as my parents, right?
This would reduce your balance to about $15,000.
That is the experience you want to have when you introduce conversational AI.
2019 sales to date are up 2.1%.
How do you use voice and empathy and build that into an experience that's going to work in a healthcare context from people who are developing gaming applications, and we learn from that. So the cross-industry pollination, very important and very helpful for us.
Coming back 1 year later and seeing how much this conference has grown, how many more women, frankly, I'm seeing in the space, has been really impactful to me personally. I think very valuable for Boom as a company to find so many great people to meet and potentially partner with.
The talent now better understand what it is that they need to do and how they can participate in this new world of voice first and AI.
The world is changing so fast. Voice, like augmented reality, virtual reality, this is going to be huge.
This is the inaugural Voice Summit Awards. This community is innovating at a pace that I don't think any industry has ever seen before. I want us to all give a round of applause for the people in this room that are changing the world.
The thing I love most is watching all the connections, all the smiles, seeing all the tweets of people having a great time together.
My definition of voice is the ability to empower others. It's time to take this to another level where you and I can make an even bigger impact.
To the 5,000 people that came from more than 26 countries, 5 continents, every state in this union, from me to you, thank you very much.
My first time at CES, but I'm here with my friend Ian, who is a vet. He's been here a ton of times, so hopefully he can share a little bit about his experience and what he's looking forward to. But if you could just start off by introducing yourself, maybe.
Yes, so my name's Ian Utility. I, among many things, am the CEO of Attention Live, and we function actually at the Runway Innovation Hub. So we're one of the innovative startups, the type of companies that you connect with. And so I love coming here. I'm helping to co-produce a live stream for the big voice event that Google Assistant is sponsoring, and I'm meeting with lots of friends, forging strategic partnerships, and just generally enjoying a week of technical glory.
That's amazing. That's what we're here for. That's what we're all here for.
That's right.
Let's say this is now what, how many?
I've probably been to CES 5 times the last decade. So usually I decide to come a couple days before it starts because one of my friends will call me like, Ian, I need you and your team to come help me with this or that. And so this time it's going to be fun. I'm a speaker this year, and so that'll be great. It'll be a fun time.
That's awesome. What is one thing you're looking forward to doing that you've never got to experience at CES before?
One thing I'm looking forward to doing that I've never got to experience before is I am using my software that my team built at CES. So during the event and all throughout the entire week, we're using Attention Live software to live stream. And I think we're the only company in the world that can live stream to Amazon Alexa, and then the other voice devices that we are adding, like Google Assistant, Samsung Bixby, Microsoft Cortana, Apple Siri through a shortcut, and then all the social media sites, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And then we send that live stream out to Spotify and iTunes and Google Podcasts. So it's one software tool that does everything. And I get to do that here at CES, which is a really cool thing for us.
That's so exciting. Well, best of luck to you, Ian.
Potato is a design consultancy. We are 100 people based in London and San Francisco. We are deeply involved in strategy and production of technology, particularly in the area of voice. And we are excited to be here today. Next. We help companies launch purposeful products that deliver better outcomes. And if we do our job right, we help to improve people's lives. We have an exciting program for you today, including some of our friends from Disney, from Mercedes-Benz, and a moderator from Amazon. We will carry on. I will introduce to you our VP of Product and Design, Nick Carey. Thank you very much for being here.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Nick. I'm VP Product Design at Potato. I've been involved in voice for about 3-4 years, really seen an interesting development in how we build voice experiences. And today what I'm going to talk about is a little bit different, which is about why voice experiences are great at building loyalty, and particularly about the relationship opportunity for brands to talk directly to their customer, learn about them, and really build a long-lasting relationship. And so, like many talks, I'm going to do a why, what, how, but rather than tell you why voice, which I'm sure you've all heard all day and everyone's here if you already know why we're in voice, I'm going to talk a little bit differently about why do we become loyal to certain brands, and why would voice help us become loyal to those brands. And so at Potato, as Perry mentioned, we like to think about purpose a lot. Purpose is really important in our work. It's about why we believe the brands that we're working with and the technology we're working on is important in providing kind of helpful technology that really enhances and improves the lives that we live. And so we tried to categorize that in a specific way, and this is how we also believe we become loyal to brands at Potato. And so the first thing is, whatever work that we do, we're trying to solve a problem. So we're trying to provide utility. And that's really important. When we start any project, we always ask, what problem are we trying to solve for our customers? And that's just the foundation, really, because you can have one brand doing one product and another brand doing another product. The reason why one brand might be priced differently, or why we were more willing to spend our money with one company as opposed to another, is because we attach a certain value to those products. And so it's really about those brands or products and services being valued by those customers and having a value. Next up is obviously that we then connect emotionally. So there's some kind of emotional relationship between that brand and us, and the reason why, when we have that particular feeling, why we choose to select that product or service. And then next is kind of what we really see next up is when we see people evangelize a brand, talk to their friends and say, this is the brand that I personally am relating to. This is the one that I recommend to my peers, and really create that community. And then of increasing importance is that we are building something that benefits society, that the brands that we relate to, we see doing good and helping the world around us. And that's a really important piece that really is that pointy edge of this pyramid that we all aspire to be doing. And so when we're talking about voice, what's different is that we now have multiple different touch points to technology. So as you can see from this photo, when we're indoors now, we quite often have a phone in our hands, a laptop at close access, and quite often now a smart speaker in the room. And so what can voice solve in that multiple touch point world differently to other interfaces? We're trying to solve these problems and think about technology in a vastly different way to how we have done in the past. And so voice might solve one particular part of that experience, or it might solve the entire end-to-end customer journey. But what's really interesting about voice is how voice can specifically take into account perhaps where we are and who we are. And so, as in this photo, what we can see is that perhaps it's an opportunity to adapt an interface to the environment. So unlike a visual interface, it would be, I'm a designer and worked on the web and on mobile for 10 years. We often strive for consistency. We wouldn't change an interface from one day to another for a customer on a visual interface. But with voice, we always adapt our conversation. We don't say the same thing every day to each other and using exactly the same words. We relate and adapt to who we're talking to and where we're talking to them and what we're talking about. And so there's a massive opportunity with voice to build a technology that allows us to speak to each other in a way in which we're thinking about what you need at a certain point in time. So when I'm renting a bike and I'm at a specific location, why don't we personalize the interaction pattern around that? Why don't we take that into account and really think about what the right level of interaction is in that environment? And so in talking about why voice can build loyalty, we can take those different pieces into account. We can build an interface that relates and personalizes to what we're trying to do. And that helps us when we talked about those 3 different steps, it allows us to kind of connect emotionally a little bit more. And I'm going to go deeper on that topic in a minute, but first I want to talk about what we should even be building. And so the question that is kind of increasingly being looked at from different brands is, okay, so where does voice and this specific interface fit into that product or brand architecture? And so, unfortunately, what we see quite often is people see emerging technology opportunities, and that's the kind of lever with which we start thinking about product design. But that's kind of not the right way, which obviously goes without saying. It's all about the needs and desires of customers. And so when we're talking about building great products or adding new elements or interfaces to our product experiences, it's all about purposeful innovation at the intersection between what emerging technology opportunities provide us and what the needs and desires of our customers are. And so we're quite commonly, as designers at an agency, looking at customer journey maps, looking at that experience through that whole buyer journey or through the entire journey of also buying it, using it. And what we're trying to do is think about where does voice perhaps fit into this and solve some problems that allow us to do it in a way that a visual interface, such as web or mobile, perhaps doesn't provide the same opportunities. And so 3 things that we generally try to make sure we're looking at and we're talking about is what customers are asking. And this is something a little bit different. So if you've done a customer journey map before, what we try to do is at every stage of that customer journey say, what would a customer be asking? Because I can guarantee you there is tons of opportunities there for you to build a better brand experience if you can have that direct dialogue with them based on what questions they are thinking and perhaps not being able to answer through one of the existing interfaces that they're using. The other one is where a customer is asking that question. And this is where, when we start to talk about voice and when we talked about why voice, we really want to think about the environment. The environment is what kind of decides really which modality or interface we're going to decide to use. If I'm in a car, it's going to obviously be preferable to use my voice. And then lastly, what is the customer's fastest path to action? And this is where we really get into the interesting thing about building a voice experience, because it really requires a certain amount of behavioral change. We're really not used to talking to inanimate objects. And so this is actually a new thing for most customers. And so we need to recognize that in our design processes. We need to make sure that we're considering, well, what would motivate me or give me the ability to decide to go and use a voice interface as opposed to the app that I already have on my phone? And so I'm going to get a little bit technical for the next few slides, which is about some design principles and standing on some of the great research that's happened over multiple years of behavior engineering, which is the fog behavior model. So when we think about why we might choose to use a voice interface, we need to think about that behavior design. And it's all about the motivation. So where my motivations exist from a kind of, I have a particular need and I need to go and get it solved. The ability to do so. So what is my abilities in terms of I'm driving, my hands are tied, obviously within that kind of persona, which is both the place and the persona, I might be looking more at, for example, using a voice interface. And then lastly, what are the prompts that are triggers essentially for me to go and make that decision of which interface I choose to use? And taking a quick pause, it's important that when we talk about engineering around behavior, that we're doing it for good, that we're thinking about purpose. And I think like a great shout out here to kind of Amazon and Google's leaders in the space was when they both added please functionality to an interface. And that's a great example of behavioral design. So recognizing a pattern in how children are using an interface and then choosing to add the please functionality to ensure that we drive the right behaviors in those users. So when we talk about behavioral design, we should always try to make sure that we're using it to encourage the right kind of behavior. So how might we think about behavior when designing voice interfaces? So the first thing that we're trying to achieve is that our brand is the first that comes to mind. That's why we're talking about loyalty during this keynote, is the reason why most brands are trying to build a voice interface is because we want to continue to build that relationship with our customers, and we want our brand to be first that comes to mind for the particular problem or need that we're trying to solve. But then the second, in terms of when we're using voice interfaces, is that the particular need or problem that we're trying to solve, is voice frequently used as the best solution? That tends to build habit-forming products, which if it's used in the right way to build things that help us do better and achieve better in our lives, those things that fit into our daily routines, for example, and speeds us up and frees us from our phone or frees us from our laptop, that can yield great results for kind of society and building great products. So Nir Eyal uses a model called Hooked. I'm sure many people have read this book, but it really translates interestingly into voice and building voice experiences. And so triggers are based upon emotions and feelings. As Nir says in his book, quite often when we build a product or a brand, and we choose one as a consumer, what we choose them based on is a negative feeling. For example, based on needing to relate to somebody or have a personal connection to somebody or feeling at home and alone, maybe we use social media. And so there are two kinds of triggers. External triggers, those are based upon the things such as an email, a marketing email that you might receive that tell you to go and open an app or open a website. And there are internal triggers. Those internal triggers are the things that the mental associations that we make between a problem we're trying to solve and a brand that we choose to solve them. And so with voice interfaces, it's interesting because the discoverability element to it is slightly different. We perhaps don't have those same external triggers that we do with other interfaces. And so we really need to think about designing voice experiences that talk to us in terms of the kind of emotion or feeling that we're trying to solve a problem against. We want the action that we solve it for to be easy and as fast as possible. And so when we think about building great voice experiences for a specific problem that we're trying to solve, we want to get the user to solving that problem as quickly as possible. And that's one of the big opportunities with voice. So build for things that you think the user needs that they can quickly solve. And then this is where we really get into what makes voice different and really great if we think through this model about building products that fit into our routines or fit into our needs or help us with feelings. The reward stage is when we can talk about having solved that problem or having realized the need that we were looking for. And so with voice, we can build a personalized response to that user. And when we go back to talking about loyalty, that really makes us feel that that brand understands what we came here looking for. And one of the things that Nir talks about is the idea of investment. So as we go through that cycle, we give something back and we say, this worked for me, perhaps, within the feedback loop, so that our products and services can get to know us better. And that underlying technology of AI that sits underneath all the voice work that we do, that enables us to build these better experiences for our users. And so, to kind of recap before I hand over the mic, why build voice experiences and why they can deliver loyalty is because there's an opportunity to connect emotionally with users, to build products that our users want to evangelize, and then to really build brands and branded experiences that benefit society and enhance what we're trying to achieve and the problems we need to solve. In terms of what we should build, let's make sure we always start with what the user needs are. Let's think about what the user is trying to solve and relate the opportunities that are provided to us from new technology to deliver such experiences. And in terms of how to build them, remember that voice is a new experience for users. So think about a loop like Nir's, for example, or Fogg's behavior model, to remember that we're only going to pick the technology that's easiest for us to use. And we want to build experiences that are both easy and also deeply personal, so that there is a benefit to us in terms of choosing that specific interface for the specific use case we're trying to build. So we're delighted to introduce Azra Rashid. She's Director, Executive Producer, and Digital Experiences at Disney Parks Experiences and Products. Azra and her team are working to create innovative, engaging voice experiences that can connect with consumers in more meaningful ways. Please join us in welcoming Azra to the stage.
Thank you. If everyone can hear me, my live, yeah. Good. Hi. I think I should welcome everyone to Vegas as well. I am thrilled to be here. It's been an exciting couple of days here at CES. Every morning I wake up and I see all this news around all these very cool voice experiences. And it's an exciting time for all of us. So I'm here today really to talk about Disney and our sort of position or involvement in the voice segment. And as you know, we are all about bringing magic, delight, entertainment to kids and families everywhere. And our primary purpose when we think about voice and voice experiences is really to connect with our guests. It's finally an opportunity for us to connect with our guests outside of parks, outside of the cruise lines, outside of hotels. When you walk out of a movie, you've just watched a Disney movie, you'll talk about it, you'll go home, you might watch that movie again. But smart speakers and voice allow us to connect directly with the user and to continue and extend those stories. So, I thought about what I wanted to share today, and I have to tell everyone, I just got back. I was in Morocco, and so I'm a little jet lagged still, so excuse me, but I really thought about what I wanted to sort of share around this space. And the one thing that came to mind was a very good friend of mine, LeVar Burton, who is, as some of you may know, is one of the best storytellers out there. And he said to me once, he said, storytelling has been around for generations, right? We've told stories around campfires, we've told stories around through movies, through books, through music, and really just the forms and the mediums change, right? As technology evolves, storytelling just continues to adapt to that technology. And so when I think about voice and I think about smart speakers, really it is deeply rooted in that personal connection through another medium. And so it's important for us to be thoughtful about how we design and create those experiences. You know, 3 years ago, when we started hearing about all of these smart speakers, we said, wow, this is very interesting, but what do we do in this space? And so as Disney, we said, well, we've got all these great stories, we've got all these great books, we've got jokes, we've got trivia, we have music. Let's just kind of, you know, give it a try and see what happens. Took off, right? We said, well, this is great. We're seeing strong customer engagement. Kids and families are coming together finally, singing songs together, daily trivia, all of that. This past year, we said, well, let's take it a step further. Instead of sort of what we call laid-back experiences, which are the stories and the jokes, etc., so let's build out more of the original content. And really, let's think about what that content strategy looks like, where we're getting our guests and our consumers more involved with those experiences and becoming more interactive. So an example of that is, you know, choose your own adventure. Sorry, I want to make sure. So I put this up here because, you know, we started with Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars. And then we've welcomed the Fox and the National Geographic families. And that's a lot of content. That's a lot of storytelling. And so imagine for us having to think through, again, you know, I always tell the team, be very thoughtful in how we deliver the experiences through these mediums. How do you want to interact with them? Right? And so we are so excited to have Nat Geo when we think about the kids space. Fox, obviously, I've been asked many times, are you going to do a Simpsons skill or action? Answer is maybe. Star Wars, Marvel, Pixar, Disney.
Hey Google, play Mickey Mouse Adventure.
Hiya, pal. Are you ready for a story? Say, hyperspeed, activate.
Hyperspeed, activate. Alexa, play Disney Dance Floor.
Do the dancing balloon. Dance around without a care in the world.
Hey Google, let's read along with Disney. In the small town of Santa Cecilia, there lived a boy named Miguel Rivera. And he gave the Legends guitar a strum.
Alexa, play Marvel Hero Training.
Excellent. And now for your training session. You will now be transported into low Earth orbit.
Me and Groot are gonna run you through your standard issue space training.
I am Groot.
Hey Google, play Disney Princess.
All right, getting Disney Princess.
Hi, it's me, Ariel. I was just out exploring with my friend Flounder. Have you ever gone on an adventure to look for treasure?
Yes, I love adventure. Alexa, play Star Wars Choose Your Destiny.
And the Millennium Falcon shot into the stars.
Really what that's all about when we think about voice experiences is we are there to seed a child's imagination, whether again it's through stories, music, sounds, themes, backgrounds, whatever it is. And it was just a very sweet example of, you know, kids, and we see this in a lot of our play testing, they'll read a book, right? But while they're reading a book or after they've read the book, they try to become the character. There's a really deep role-playing experience there. Smart Speakers has allowed us to bring sort of the environment and the ambiance and just the worlds, bring them, immerse them into the world of their favorite Disney characters. So the last 2 years for us has been very, very busy. As you can see, I wanted to sort of share with everyone all of the skills and the actions across Amazon Alexa, Google Home. We've done many, many different voice experiences. Again, like I said earlier, we started off with just stories. And then we moved into things like Disney Sing-Along, sing with your favorite Disney characters. My favorite is called Disney DJ Remix. Basically, we took a lot of the favorite Disney songs, we remixed them. Kids love it. They think they're their own DJ, and they like to play with that. And then, of course, Marvel's Project Mind is our first STEM skill. So you can see there's just a range of possibilities when it comes to developing or thinking about voice experiences. This past holiday season, we released 4 new skills through Free Time Unlimited, really focused on kids and across different franchises, Star Wars, Disney Princess, like I said, Disney Remix, and then Marvel's Project Mind. And I will share with you, if I can make sure this works, a little snippet of Disney's dance floor.
Cher Monsieur et Madame, it is with deepest pride and greatest pleasure that I invite you to break it down. Dance like Lumiere. Stick your arms up by your side like they're lit candles. Now try to put them out by waving your arms around.
Wave your arms around. Kids are doing this everywhere, yes. Super fun. It's a very, very small example. But again, these are just special moments. You know, we're all about bringing those special, delightful moments to kids. And I think the greatest thing now is that kids can sit in their rooms and experience all of these great sort of Disney characters, environments, etc. So last year was interesting, and a lot of people ask me, you know, they say, well, what are you guys working on? And so as you saw earlier, you know, a lot of voice experiences were developed. We had Google last year in a program called Read Along. And it was the first time where we were able to take a physical product and augment it through an audio experience. And what that means is we selected the little golden books because they're just very sweet, special. The format is short. And as you read the book, a little golden book, I think there are about 14 or 15 of them that are available. As you read through it, there are certain words that trigger an audio experience. So I'll give you a little example.
Hey Google, let's read along with Disney.
Start reading whenever you're ready.
In the small town of Santa Cecilia, there lived a boy named Miguel Rivera. His house was full of...
Dad, skip to my favorite part.
Okay. And he gave the Legends guitar a strum.
Storytime just got a little more magical. Hear sound effects from Google Home Mini when you read aloud with Disney Pixar's Coco and select Little Golden Books. Available now.
Very cool. Thank you. And then this past holiday season, I'm sure everyone heard of Frozen 2, maybe. Small little film that came out. Again, we partnered with Google, and we did a very, very unique and exclusive installation. We took the Frozen 2 little golden book, we created an experience, we bundled it with the Google Mini. Very successful. We also we wrote in partnership with the actual filmmakers of Frozen 2. We sat down with them and created 20 new stories that are extension stories around the movie. So again, it's not necessarily about the retelling of a movie for us. It really allows us to extend storytelling or bring new stories to life. So what's next? I think we're all asking the same question. You know, we're definitely not building airplanes and helicopters and things like that. But what we can share with you today is that you know, definitely a lot more around voice experiences. You know, really digging into sort of the interactions with our guests. So again, you know, moving maybe from storytelling to more utility-based activities. Connecting at a deeper level with our guests as well, whether it be at parks, through hotels, at home. Really, we see this as an opportunity to connect at every single point. Physical and voice, right? So you saw a small example with Google. Thinking about how we take physical product and we essentially create voice experiences around that. So I can't share too much with you today, but definitely top of mind for us. And then, of course, global expansion. As we look into 2020 and beyond, there's a great opportunity for us, again, to connect with our guests globally in different languages, regionalizing content, bringing new stories. Each region is so different. We just see this as a very big opportunity for us. And then finally, just wanted to say thank you from my favorite friend, and look forward to our panel discussion.
Can you hear me? Everybody hear me? I'm hopping up here on the stage. Nice job on your presentation. That was awesome. I'm Matthew Cadman. I work at Amazon Alexa. I'm on the international team, and I'm responsible for our global agency strategy. And we have an interesting panel here today. Obviously, you've already heard from Nick and Usra. And so we're bringing the agency flavor, and we're also bringing the brand flavor. So I also want to introduce Andrew from Mercedes-Benz as well. I've got a bunch of questions written on my little piece of paper here. We're going to get through them. We've got about 15 minutes or so. I'm going to ask some questions, but then I'm going to turn it back over to Perry, and then we're going to also take some audience questions. So, of course, we want to involve you in the conversation. And as any kind of brand-focused, presentation or discussion goes, we like to know a little bit about our audience as well. I did introductions up here. I'm going to skip the part we talked about you guys talking all about what you do in your thing, because you two have, but I'm going to give Andrew the chance because we're limited on time. But I also want to ask the audience, how many people in the audience are representing a brand? Okay, brand, lots of brand hands coming up today, great. How many agencies do we have in the house? Okay, lots of agencies and tool providers. How about media? How many media teams do we have here? Awesome. So it's good. This is a great forum here at CES to have this conversation, and we're all on our own voice journey together as a category, but we're also on a voice journey from a brand perspective. So we're going to get into the conversation. So Andrew, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we can jump into the panel?
Yeah, you bet. So my name is Andrew. I work in our Silicon Valley office of Mercedes-Benz Research and Development. So we make sure that we look into the next trends and to develop products that are really at the height of innovation at any given time. So right now I'm responsible for UX, data, and AI, understanding how this affects the Mercedes brand and how we can use this to connect to our customer. And right now that especially includes the Hey Mercedes voice assistant.
Excellent. So let's jump in. I've got a whole list of questions here, but I'll try to get some of the most interesting ones. But let's start with as you know, in the conversation around brand. Let's start with just why voice? Why does voice matter to your brand? We'll start with Usra, and then we'll go down this, and it's the same conversation also for agency as well. So yeah, why voice?
Why does voice matter to our brand?
Yeah.
I mean, like I said earlier, voice is actually one of the most important things to our brand. For us, for Disney, it allows us, like I said, to connect with our guests. That's very important. But not only does it allow us to connect with our guests, it allows families, kids to connect with their favorite characters, right? To hear them, to listen to them, to imagine with them. So many times I see kids, they've got this large imagination, right? They want to be Buzz Lightyear, they want to be a princess. Through voice, through smart speakers, we're able to finally put them in that setting, right? And that's awesome. That's a very beautiful thing, and it's very important to us. So I think from our perspective at Disney, it really is the connective tissue directly to our guests.
Yeah. I might add to that also that encourages the families to do things together as well. So that's
absolutely, and that's a great point, right? Usually if you have a smart speaker, I know at home it's sitting in my kitchen. right? Everyone congregates around the kitchen.
Yeah.
And so we always hear where, like, families are playing trivia together, or they're listening to stories together. You saw the Google Home and Little Golden Book. It's reading time in the evening, right? And so that is an incredible thing also, that you're able to bring families together. Yeah.
Thank you. Andrew, how does voice matter for your brand?
Yeah, I mean, for us, as Nick was saying in his presentation, automotive is an area where voice is sort of singularly important, in that we're trying to drive this huge hunk of metal down the road at God knows what speed, and without running into anything. And so I want to have my hands on the wheel, I want to have the eyes on the road.
Gonna keep on time.
And so this means that when you want to operate any of the systems in the car, the most natural way to do it is through voice interaction, because that is the least distracting environment you can have in such an environment.
Excellent, thank you. Nick, how about for your brand?
I think from a product development agency perspective, we don't build websites or we don't build apps. We build around experiences, and so voice is a natural modality, and it adds another natural interface to widen how we reach customers and widen the experiences that we build, because as customers are increasingly more savvy to kind of choose when we use a phone, choose when we use an app, choose when we use a website, and so voice is just another layer within kind of our product architecture, essentially, of how we reach those customers and how we build those experiences.
Excellent. So I'm going to ask the same question with just a different pivot. I mean, I asked you how it mattered to your brand. How do you think voice matters to your customers? The most probably important of all our lives are our customers.
I'm going to take brand away for a minute, right? Like, this really is about us, and we're consumers, we're customers.
Yes.
I mean, I think, I'll speak for myself, is it gives me access to things that I wouldn't have had access to before, right? So when I think about just the usage, and it's interesting because we talked about this earlier too.
Yep.
I don't think we're quite there yet, right? We're still speaking into, or we're talking into a speaker. Like, it's not yet natural, which is something that we need to continue to evolve and iterate upon. But it matters. Like, I get up and I won't say what I use, but I play my music in the morning.
Say what you use.
Right?
We're on a voice journey together.
I have my TV connected to it. It is changing my life.
Yeah.
It is making it easier. I think about just in the automotive industry, right? Like, hands-free. Like, that's pretty cool, right? And if I'm driving to drop my kids off to school, or if I'm on a long trip, or if I'm going to Disneyland, for example, I'm able to call out those experiences, and I never had the ability to do that before. So I think it's going to be, for me, I can say personally, it changes the way I live my life. And I think for our customers as well, that's what we need to think about. It's not just about, hey, let's create a story and put it up on this platform. Is this bringing something that is delightful to them, right? So I think that's important.
I think the customer delight's a really important aspect. One of the things we see is people have a really deep relationship with their vehicles. It's a very emotional part of, especially in the American market, but a very emotional part of the experience.
Yep.
And if you look around, a huge number of people, they have their first kiss in the car. They, drive to their wedding in a fancy, car with whatever makes sense to them. And so it's really an important part of our lives. And so this set of interactions that we get at the same point, when we're in the car, we're talking to the car. And this lets us bond with the car and continue this emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important part of building a story behind what you're really trying to do, instead of just issuing commands.
Yeah, great. And Nick, from your perspective, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but you probably have two kinds of customers, right? Like, and I have the same redirect. You've got the customers who are clients, who are brands, but you also have the end customer. So for you, how does voice affect your customers?
Well, I guess we always think about things from a kind of end user perspective always. Even when we're talking to brands, it's about what problem or unmet needs are we trying to solve. I think just to add a different flavor to it, because I agree with everything that we've already just been saying, but also there's a lot of unmet needs, and voice is a really powerful technology to reach people who perhaps haven't had the same experiences with other technologies. So there's huge accessibility benefits. There's a wealth of different experiences that we can build with voice, and watching how children, for example, interact with voices is hugely entertaining to watch, but also providing really interesting, rich experiences that are kind of really valuable to that child's development in a different way to what they're getting from a visual interface.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, right? It's been a world of apps and tablets, particularly for kids. And the thing that we heard most from parents is that kids are always just nose down.
Right.
Right. This allows them to look around, to again,
walk down the street.
Walk down the street.
Everybody's,
yeah. And it does, say, stimulate different types of emotion, like different types of patterns, right? Learning patterns as well. So yeah.
In some respects, it allows us to be almost more human.
More human.
Yeah.
You interact, right? I see my nephews and nieces, like they'll come home and they'll run up to a smart speaker and say, they've got homework, what's 8 times 8, right? Like they're speaking to it. They're speaking to it. And that's very interesting to see young kids grow with these smart speakers.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to shift a little bit around. So we covered, customers, and we covered brand, and it's like the other thing that I think I hear this in a lot of the meetings that I'm at. It's like people want to know what everybody else is doing, so case studies and those kinds of things. But one other big question that people are asking, especially brands, is how are you going to market, right? And you can ask that in a lot of different flavors, but like from a go-to-market perspective, what do you think is important? What are you doing? How are you driving that engagement that everybody talked about? I think that word engagement is something that we should all share collectively around. That's how we know when things are working well, whether it's in voice or whether it's in web or anything, but that engagement is super important. So go-to-market strategy. What are you thinking?
So we have a lot of work to do, right? Like as a segment, as everyone who is in this room, we all agree that discovery is still an issue, right? And we'll get there. It will get there. It's like the day, when apps, like how do you get through the App Store? How do you find the right voice experience without a visual, right? We're starting to see visuals now. At Disney, we're also very thoughtful about not only what we create, but how we bring it to market. How we bring it to market, and then how we market it or raise awareness around it. And so we partner, of course, with Amazon, Google, a lot of different companies. But really, it's Disney as well. And we make sure that we do as much as we can to build awareness. I talked earlier about the Little Golden Book. Mm-hmm. That was a very big endeavor for us. It was very thoughtful, again, about how we place it at retail. What's the positioning around it? What's the messaging around it? How do people know that when they open a book, they're supposed to do X, Y, and Z, right? We're still also teaching the consumer.
Fair.
So I think there are a couple of things as we think about go-to-market. It's not just about developing content or experiences. It's about making sure that we're educating the consumers. That's critical, right? How do you find something? Discoverability, marketing, merchandising. This is important if you're a developer out there. Talk to your platforms, make sure that they are merchandising it and that there's product placement for it. So same type of attributes that we would do with a physical product through sell-through at retail is the same thing that we would do with a voice experience.
Great. How about for you, Andrew, and Mercedes?
Yeah. I'd bounce off the idea of feature discovery, because feature discovery it's more than just knowing what's out there. It's knowing how we can use it, what are the full capabilities, and what does this mean. And so we can say, well, I'm in a car, it's pretty reasonable that I can roll up and down the windows. I should probably be able to do that by voice. We say, how exactly would we expect to do that? If you ask 100 people what words they would say to change the windows, you'll get 200 different answers back. And most of these people would be guessing, might not want to just guess, and it's too hard. They just look around for some physical controls. And so we want to make sure that the customers know what sort of things they can say and get comfortable with the idea that they can really interact with the car using natural language, and that really anything they say is a valid conversation. And we need to take it, rather than having the voice system being a set of commands the user has to learn, but the voice system needs to learn what the user wants to do and enable the user to do what they want to do, when they want to do it, and most importantly, how they want to do it.
It should feel seamless. It should just feel natural.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, I think it's a shared responsibility between both like Amazon or Google if it's a platform play, but also the brand. And so just building and making something won't ever, like whether it's an app or a voice skill, it won't drive customers to it. And so when you're solving a need, I really like this idea as well that we're kind of really starting to see over the next few years of kind of how physical prompts, such as the book in the Disney example and the read along, is and augmenting because voice really augments what we're already doing and what kind of experiences and products we're using. And so thinking about how voice can fit into that customer journey and have the right prompts along that way to ensure that kind of users are aware that there is an opportunity for them to interact with that brand directly, I think is a really powerful thing that we're going to really start to see, I think, as we take more responsibility as a product or company or in delivering great experiences.
Very good. Well, that takes us to the end of the questions I have on the piece of paper. It also takes us to around 3:15. So Pete, I don't know if you're still in here. Are we good to go a couple more minutes?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So I want to invite Perry from WPP Potato, to come up and ask some audience questions. So if you're in the audience, do we have a mic runner? Pete's going to be our mic runner. So if you have a question, please stand up. Pete will come over there and give you the microphone, ask the question, and then we'll have our panel answer that. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Matthew.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
See you later. We've run a little bit over on time, but I just want to be mindful of time, but also give the audience an opportunity to ask any broad questions or questions to anybody individually up here on the stage. And with that,
I'm running to the back of the room right now, Mr. David Hayfitz with
We have
Prudential.
Thanks, Pete. I had the privilege of being on a panel earlier, and it was with enterprises, and so we talked a lot about security and privacy and regulation. And it doesn't come into play so much when you get into the consumer side. But I'm wondering how it enters your minds. And just an example earlier, I have a 5 the fear, risk versus reward. So how does that play in, same across the boards for all three of you, in the considerations when you're dealing with consumer? You want to give as much content and as much flexibility as possible, but then when you add children or you add other communities in, it can be challenging as well. So how do you address that?
Why don't you get started?
Thanks. I mean, look, privacy, security, these are all questions that have been raised for the last few years. I'll speak. That is the number one priority for us, especially because we are connecting with kids every single day. And so we have a team, a very large team, that we are in lockstep with, right? There's nothing that we do that is not reviewed by our teams. We're also, obviously, the Walt Disney Company. With any company, security and privacy is key to us. So we'll never do anything, there will never be a call to action, for example, right, to make a purchase. In fact, again, strategically, we're partnering with the right partners to make sure that we are not crossing those boundaries, right? We're never going to go out there and do something that we shouldn't be doing unless it's reviewed. So, I think with all of us here, we have this conversation, and with all of you out there, it's our job to make sure that we're taking it very seriously, and we are.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's important is to look at the ramifications of the brand image. So when you take a brand like Disney, where you're trusting your kids with it, or a healthcare company, or in our case, Daimler is also an extremely private company when it comes to handling of customer data. And so because it's part intrinsically of the brand, we want to make sure that we match the experiences and therefore the appetite for data security in with the user of the actual brand.
Yeah, and speaking from a non-brand owner perspective, but from a kind of product development perspective, when we talked about purposeful products, kind of the pinnacle that we look for products to do is to benefit society. And so we build upon trust to get to that point. And if we do things that would break that trust with our customers, then we're going to go right back to the base of that pyramid that I showed, which is kind of, at the end of the day, we're just solving a problem for those users, but they don't even trust that we're doing that, solving that problem to benefit them. We're solving it for kind of the company's benefit. And so we need to make sure that we maintain that trust, but we're doing things that benefit society and benefit the user.
This question is more for Andrew. A question on the cars and voice, and a lot of proprietary manufacturers, or a lot of manufacturers have proprietary voice. Do you see like how Google or Alexa would integrate into that, or how do you see the market going?
Well, the important thing in automotive, or really anywhere, is that the brand can connect with the customers. And so when I'm in a car speaking to my car, I want to feel like I'm connecting with the brand of car that I've purchased and the brand of car that I choose to interact with. And so I think it's very important for the UI layer, whether it's a visual UI, whether it's the interior design, or the voice assistant, to map to the brand itself. And so we have our Hey Mercedes voice assistant brand because we want the customer to be connecting with Mercedes.
One last question. Anyone? Oh, right over here. James from London. He's back.
So Nick, when you were talking earlier, there's something that was quite interesting. It was the please function. And I guess what that indicates is that when you start to engage with voice as a brand owner, you have to start thinking about the character and ethics, or the personality that you as a brand are going to employ. And has that influenced the way that you developed your voice activities so far? The kind of character
Yeah. So some of the work that we've done has been with, for example, gaming clients, and those have been really fun experiences to work on because character and storytelling, much like as I was talking about Disney, it's really interesting to be able to kind of think about that character and that voice and building the personality, but at the same time, you have to think about the fact that somebody is going to actually also interact with that person and so that you're building. And so you need to think about the other side of the coin, which is what is the other person going to feel or behave when they talk to that person. And so thinking about language and getting into kind of the linguistics of it and thinking about which words you choose and why you're choosing those words to interact with somebody is quite important. And I think that's one of the really interesting things from the technology aspect, which is there is a huge human component in building these experiences that I think we sometimes forget when we talk about AI and machine learning and all the rest. We need some of the greatest copywriters in the world to really build great experiences coupled with design and engineering, and it's really about a number of different talents that get us to build these great experiences. It's not going to be a AI-driven, machine learning-driven thing where you're going to have a character spit out whichever words it is, because there's a huge human element at play.
Yeah, and I just want to add, because you mentioned characters, the authenticity of the character. Right? In your mind, you have an idea, for example, of what Mickey Mouse might sound like. And so to this point, for us particularly, most of our work goes into finding the right talent, to writing the right scripts. A lot of people don't know that, right? Like I would say that 70%, 60 to 70% of the amount of development that we do goes into really making that experience authentic. Because if we can't make it authentic, then again, it's all about the brand, and we're really not representing the brand correctly.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. You've been a great audience and a great panel. Give it a hand for these people up here. This has been fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrew. Yes. Yes, great job. Thank you, Perry. Great job. Really. All right. Okay, very excited about our next conversation. You've heard throughout the day this music, this sound coming in this room. That's actually the sonic brand now for voice. It was developed by a great company out of New York called Audio Brain that is headed up by Audrey Arbini. She is a 2-time Emmy Award-winning audio expert. Her clients are some of the best in the world, including a company that some of us might have heard of called Whirlpool. Let's see, where are my next speakers? Are they coming up? Are they back here? Are they over there? Where are we at? Okay, they're getting the stage set for us. How many have not got their Google Home Hub yet? Okay, you can get one in the back of the room on the left-hand side behind the Google Assistant sign there. You've got a nice assistant there. If you want to go grab your Google Home Hub, do that before you get out of here. Also on the table is Bradley Metrock's book, More Than Just Weather and Music. So grab the book as well. And then also on the back table is our Voice Strategy book by Scott and Susan Westwater that just came out. An outstanding book.
Welcome to the speaker room here at CES. I'm inside the Aria, right next to where we'll be doing the Voice Summit tomorrow all day from 9 a.m. to 4:30. Google Assistant is our presenting sponsor. We have a bunch of other sponsors like Amazon Alexa. It's going to be a very exciting event. And I just wanted to say hello and welcome. This is CES Day 1. And I'm about to go interview a couple folks across in the sports technology area where people have been integrating Amazon Alexa and other voice technology into things for athletes. And so that'll be fun. But before I go over there, I thought it'd be nice to say hello, welcome, and we'll be creating lots and lots of videos, lots of content. I hope that you enjoy coming on this ride with me and our team here at CES. And I'll be back with more soon.
My name is Tyler Stanke from Runway Innovation Hub, and we are here at CES in Las Vegas 2020 outside the Bellagio Fountains. I have the honor today to be joined by Ian. Ian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on?
My name is Ian Utilli. I, amongst many things, am the CEO of Attention Live. My company, this one and past companies, have functioned inside of your Runway Innovation Hub. Super grateful for what you and your team do. And I'm here at CES to help co-produce the live stream for a big event happening called VOICE Summit on Wednesday. It's an all-day event. Google's the main sponsor. We have speakers from every major voice tech company, and that's a big thing that drew me here. I also came to spend time with you and your team, as well as some other companies that I hope to forge strategic partnerships with.
For sure. And you talk about this voice tech and this voice tech track. What is it that excites you about voice technology here at CES 2020?
Yeah, well, I think that it's maturing, right? So voice technology has gotten to where if you don't have an education, if you don't speak and write, so if you don't speak a major language, if you can't read and write, because of voice technology, a human being, these are the 4 billion people that make less than $2.50 a day around the world, that half of the world will have a chance to actually interact with technology for the first time as soon as they have access to something as simple as an Amazon Alexa speaker, a Google Assistant, HomePod, or internet connection, right, of course. And so to me, it is the great thing that will unlock abundance in humanity. And so we've worked on a really fun software development for that. And I imagine I'll be talking about that all week.
Oh, wow, that's really awesome.
Fun.
For those who haven't been to CES before, describe the environment, describe the energy. What are they missing out on this week?
Well, you know, I think that you should come and find out for yourself. I've been here, you know, at least a handful of times last decade, and this is where a lot of my friends will come, and it's a great way to meet up with people, meet new people, and get deals done. We don't want to keep you forever, so thank you for your attention, and we will talk with you again soon.
From the main stage to our breakout sessions to the expo hall. I think we had more than 500 companies speaking at this conference. It has become the place where the global voice-first communities are coming together.
There's just so many affordances that speech give us. It's the first time in my life that my kids are just as excited and up to speed on the tech as my parents, right?
This would reduce your balance to about $15,000.
That is the experience you want to have when you introduce conversational AI.
2019 sales to date are up 2.1%.
How do you use voice and empathy and build that into an experience that's going to work in a healthcare context from people who are developing gaming applications? And we learn from that. So the cross-industry pollination, very important and very helpful for us.
Coming back 1 year later and seeing how much this conference has grown, how many more women, frankly, I'm seeing in the space, has been really impactful to me personally. I think very valuable for Boom as a company to find so many great people to meet and potentially partner with.
The talent now better understand what it is that they need to do and how they can participate in this new world of voice first and AI.
The world is changing so fast. Voice, like augmented reality, virtual reality, this is going to be huge.
This is the inaugural VOICE Summit Awards. This community is innovating at a pace that I don't think any industry has ever seen before. I want us to all give a round of applause for the people in this room that are changing the world.
The thing I love most is watching all the connections, all the smiles, seeing all the tweets of people having a great time together.
My definition of voice is the ability to empower others. It's time to take this to another level where you and I can make an even bigger impact.
To the 5,000 people that came from more than 26 countries, 5 continents, every state in this union, from me to you, thank you very much.
Welcome to the Sports Technology Room here at CES. It is day one, and I'm excited to talk with some of the folks in here that are integrating things like voice technology into sports tech. And so this room is filled with sports tech demos, and then the stage is just one thing after another talking about how sports and athletes and athletic organizations are all benefiting from integrating new technology, things like voice. And tomorrow we are running live stream all day from 9 until 4:30 here at the Aria at the Voice Summit that Pete Erickson and his team at Modev are running. And so that'll be a very exciting time. And so you can see, like, there's a bike helmet company right behind me, and they've integrated Amazon Alexa to control the lights and the speakers. And so all these new thoughts of how to integrate voice tech so you can speak to these IoT products that you use on a regular basis. So I'll be back with more in just a moment. Welcome. I'm here with Jonathan from SafeTech, and they've integrated Amazon Alexa into their helmets. Jonathan, tell us a bit about how you've integrated Amazon Alexa into your products.
Absolutely. Your phone connects via the Alexa app to the helmet and allows you to have all the voice commands. So instead of pressing a button on your standard smart helmet to up your volume, you say, Alexa, turn up the volume. You say, Alexa, play Mick Jagger. Alexa, give me turn-by-turn directions to the Bellagio.
It's very, very cool.
Yeah.
And so imagine all the different applications that can be done with voice technology, and what a great example that your company is doing. And so thanks for being here. We're grateful for companies like yours that are integrating things like Alexa so that people have the ability to access technology with their voice.
We love it.
All right, and you guys are here at the sports technology area with the booth set up. So if you're local here at CES, you can come check it out.
Come see us at the ARIA.
That's right.
Have a really compelling sound, and it just kind of really communicates the brand's personality, because sound connects on an emotional level. Sound can viscerally, you can remember words to a song you haven't heard in 20 years, and you'll remember every single word of it. You'll feel it. It's the way we're wired. I study a lot of biomusicology, psychoacoustics, about the science of how your brain processes sound and the psychology of how we respond to sound. There's so many opportunities here, and that's what we were talking about when we were dealing with two of your brands, about, you know, how do we engage them on this particular sense to give them a richer experience.
Right, especially as we had a new generation of products coming to market. We wanted it, again, to be a holistic experience where all those touch points matched.
Right, so again, like I said, most people, when you say sonic branding, when I first started out, and even now when I talk to people, it kind of astounds me. Sonic branding is not new. I mean, I alone have been doing it over 25 years. I could tell you other companies, and two of them are here, they're colleagues of mine, have been doing it as long. Now there's a couple hundred, but what it really is, they'll think of, oh, it's a sound logo, it's like Intel Inside, or it's a jingle. But it's so much more than that. And everyone says that we're now in a voice-first era. We are really, more importantly, in a sound-first era, and voice is a part of that. So when you have a podcast, do you have a musical intro? Do you have interstitials when you're changing, this is sponsored by, or coming up on another subject? We're doing podcasts right now for a brand, and they have 18 different podcasts, but they all have a central tone and feel to them. They're all connected. When those podcasters speak at an event like this, do they have a room-warming soundtrack like what Pete's been playing, his sonic branding? There's so many places that your brand is heard that you don't think of, and so many places that you can utilize sound along with the voice and along with your other things that you're doing that will really elevate. It's not like 1 + 1 = 2. It's like 1 + 1 = 10. When you really kind of sit down and say, what does my brand sound like? And then you start to articulate that and you start to define that, you then have that blueprint to kind of leverage out to these other touch points pretty seamlessly. So with Whirlpool and KitchenAid, we were doing two brands simultaneously. We were doing sonic branding. And I just want to kind of give the definition of what that is first. So sonic branding is an art and it's a science that surrounds the strategic and creative development and deployment of an authentic sound and experience of a brand. And a sound identity system is what you just saw on the slide before that, where they're all connected. And please don't think that it's flat, that it's Intel inside, Intel inside, Intel inside, or NBC. This is a living, breathing brand. And think of it as when you create a blueprint for a house, you have everything kind of laid out and a certain aesthetic and a certain idea that's defined just for you. You can then build upon that. You could build up, you can build out, you can change over time, but you've got such a solid foundation to build upon. That's what sonic branding is. So we were talking recently about like why this is surging so much now, because sonic branding obviously is a really, really hot topic, as is voice at the moment. So why are voice and sound so critical and on everybody's front burner right now as this really fantastic new thing that you have to do? So we were having this conversation.
All right. So obviously, as we begin to evolve into what we were describing as experience brand languages, thinking about all the touch points together to make sure they sounded as a holistic set, we compare the look of our products and the way they're about to feel to the sounds that we had. And we'll see if this works. Yeah, all right, there's one. There's another, right? So, while I don't have pictures of the new products, we don't want to convey that sense of, gosh, you just woke up in the morning and you want to kill an alarm. Instead we want to celebrate those happy moments in people's lives when their food is ready to eat and their clothes are finished. And technology has changed. We're at CES. We've seen the evolution of technologies. Our appliances are now capable of playing much better sounds than what was created with these piezo buzzers. We have polyphonic speakers in the products that can basically play any MP3 type of quality sounds. Now, don't get worried. You're not going to wake up one morning and find a U2 album magically downloaded to your refrigerator or anything like that. We want to make sure we're doing this very carefully and within the scheme of the brand to make that right connection with the customer.
Yeah, so these are the reasons that we think that this is going on right now. So it's certainly driven by all of the emerging technologies, the need for voice development, voice technology, synthetic voices, all the things that you've been hearing all day long, and the need for more sound to support the different places where we're just listening to things. And Brett Kinsella, I don't know if he's in the room or still interviewing people outside, but he had asked me to write an article for VoiceBot on voice first, because we do a tremendous amount of voice branding. And I said, can I please preface it with an article on sound first? So really the thing is that these customers have choices right now. They can have any brand they want. They can connect with any brand in the world, like that. You see it, you want it, you order it, you have it. The technology is advancing so unbelievably fast in so many different industries, and so that consumer is driving it. And if they listen to what you're doing and it sounds disconnected, so when we do like brand discovery and research, and we show the brand kind of what they sound like across a variety of touch points, not just their briefcast, or not just, whatever they're doing in their voice device, but the things that surround that, the things that are either in videos that are tutorials for those things, or at events where they're presenting those things. And those things are really kind of like not even sounding like they're from the same place. That consumer is hearing it too. And the brands that are really successful are brands that align really well. And lastly is this emotional connections. And I think that this is gigantic because people are disconnected emotionally, I think, right now. And so do a lot of other people and a lot of scientists. I looked at the kids' table, which, kids' table plus some adults, over the holidays. And I took a picture of it because every single kid at that table, and they were ranging in age from 6 to 18, was on a device. And this is during our holiday meal, every single one of them. I said, look at you guys, you're not even interacting with each other. But they buy vinyl. They want to hold a book. They want to be told a story. They love podcasts. They like to imagine. So there's this longing for this emotional connection, and that again is why the product sounds that we put in are like we're speaking to somebody. We're creating a relationship with that customer. So.
Okay. So speaking of the relationship with the customer themselves, let's talk a little bit more about the actual project we got ourselves involved in. This focuses on 2 of our brands. Each of those brands has a bit of a story to it itself. They each target different customers and different brand segmentation. And let me just briefly describe them. So Whirlpool, when it has come to market recently with a new campaign, is really focused on the caregiver. And this is a customer who really drives pleasure out of taking care of their family. Doing chores is an act of love that gives them fulfillment in their lives to kind of see their family grow up and be well taken care of. On the other hand, the KitchenAid customer is all about the maker. Somebody who is willing to explore, gets great joy out of trying new things, expanding their horizons. And you can even think about this in terms of that famous KitchenAid stand mixer that's been around for so long. A product that also has a story to it, and many people have personal stories of it being handed down from generation to generation within their families, and how that's kind of grown with them throughout the time. So as we're looking at these brands, we also consider the consumer experience journey as they went through it. And working with AudioBrain, we developed dozens of sounds. We'll kind of take a deep dive into just a couple of the sounds so we can play them and so you can hear some examples, compare between KitchenAid and Whirlpool. But really, we use sounds in a couple of different ways in our products. One way is really kind of focused around the accessibility issues. So if you're an arm's length away from a product and you're touching a button, to get feedback that it actually accepted that input and you have to get reassured that it's going to work and perform as expected. On the other hand, you might be needing sounds as a feedback mechanism. Perhaps you're in another room and your laundry is finished. Now you know it's time to go grab the clothes or move them from the washer to the dryer. So each of those sounds have a different opportunity for us and different ways to optimize the sounds for that particular situation. Now diving into Whirlpool, we'll play the same 4 sounds for Whirlpool and KitchenAid, but setting us up will be Aubrey as she describes the actual things to listen to.
So this was an extremely collaborative project with the Whirlpool teams and the KitchenAid teams. So we'll start with Whirlpool, which is about care, caregiving, everyday care, warmth, reassurance, taking something that is a daily chore and making you feel really good about it, making you feel taken care of. So we wanted to bring that sincerity and that warmth into these sounds. So we created them for Whirlpool, we used a hand-plucked harp. We had the ability, because they're polyphonic, to texture the sounds and make them really feel rich and warm, which we couldn't do before when you heard those piezo sounds. We could now do some really great things with the sounds, but we wanted people to feel really good when they heard these sounds. And they're not intrusive, and they feel comforting, and they make you feel good. And we've also recorded like a lot of real life sounds in some of the other ones, not these in particular, but like hands rubbing on a pair of jeans. But in this in particular, it's really about the human touch and that there's somebody in there caring for you and your activities.
We'll play a couple of them. Power on the product. One of the button sounds as you're toggling between settings. Perhaps when the preheat is finished and you're ready to put food in the oven. And then again, perhaps the oven has finished cooking and you're ready to take the food out.
Right. And the power on sound is also the sound logo, sound signature. Mm-hmm. And it will then leverage out to other touch points and become an icon for the brand. It's already kind of starting to when we get a little into something as we move along a little faster. So there you can hear the sound goes up. It's aspirational. It's 2-note gesture, which fit really well with Whirlpool. And not to say that if you have 5 syllables, it has to have 5 notes, but sometimes it really works out really well that way. And you could hear the richness and yet this quiet sincerity in the sounds. And they're all handcrafted. So for KitchenAid, KitchenAid is about the maker and the joy of making things. This here is a far more tactile sound. It's more modern. It's about doing things. We recorded found sounds that we would find in the kitchen. You can hear the metal sounds and the different things that we did, and we took them, and then when we record them for real, that's Foley, and then we take them and we kind of blend them to make them almost sound like they're real kitchen tools, and that's what we do when we create skeuomorphism, which is to give that real life sense to the sounds. So here you'll hear this handcrafted kalimba, a lot of percussion about making things, and you get a sense of things being done.
Power on.
And so you can hear the difference, and yet in certain ways, there's certain cadences that are a tiny bit similar, just as a distant relative, so that a brand can evolve, as a lot of brands have, to be unified. So what happened after that was the appliances came out, and I spoke to Brandon, and I said, well, I've got a call from the Atlantic, and they want to talk about the washing machine that is playing the harp, and it became a story. So, you know, we both participated in this article, and that's what they wanted to know. And the main thing was, it's like, you're going to use sound anyway. Why not make something that is really emotionally connecting to the customer? So that was followed by a call from the Times UK, and they were really fascinated by the Atlantic piece, so they wanted to do their own thing. And then Paul Ross, who has the early late show in the UK, for those of you from there, he just found the whole topic fascinating when he read the Times UK. And so you see, this starts to become a story. So these sounds have now taken on a life of their own. And it's been really a wonderful experience, because we're getting positive feedback, and people are talking about these sounds. They're not just any sounds. They're sounds that people remember, and they're sounds that people are talking about. And I know that for you, Brandon, and at Whirlpool, it's been also pretty rewarding too.
Right. So last year, when we were at CES displaying several of the new products, they won the CES Innovation Awards. Now, I don't want to say that was all because of sound or the visual elements. Again, it was about the whole products working together as a continuous and seamless experience together.
So we're just going to leave you, because we're almost out of time. You can reach out to either one of us. We'll be at the party tonight. We're extremely passionate about sound, but these are just 6 quick tips, and every single one of you tomorrow can do something to improve the sound of your brand. Just listen to where your brand is playing sounds, but we'll go through the 6 quick tips, and then catch up with us when we're having our cocktails.
Sure. The first one is the importance of building a cross-functional team. So Whirlpool is a global organization, layers upon layers, but getting all the people together in the room, between marketing, engineering, design, helped us establish the right direction to go, as well as help generate buy-in as well. And number 2?
Right, sure. And number 2 is understand your brand and its landscape. Do the homework. It's critical. It enables you to know where to differentiate. Don't stick within your own industry. You may be working in one sector, working with voice in a particular area. Don't just stay in there. Think of mindshare competitors as well. They may be in a completely different industry, but they have the demographic, the psychographic. They have the super fans that you want to have. They have the same audience. What are they doing well? We do research. We audited products. We audited all the competitors. We looked at the technology. We looked at the infrastructure. We looked at technical specs. And we looked at the brand itself, where it was and where it would be evolving to. So we don't just create a sound for today. We create a blueprint that rolls out and shows you here's phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. Here's how you could grow iteratively, whether you're a big brand like Whirlpool or whether you're a smaller startup. We have those that we're working with too, and they're getting great results from just doing the little big things. Every brand could start today.
Third one is near and dear to my heart as a UX person, which is truly to understand your consumer needs. I think we've heard that from a number of our speakers throughout today. But this is as important to see is where sound is valuable as where sound isn't valuable. People have sleeping kids at home. You know, do we want to give them control over the sound so that way they can adjust them and personalize them for their own needs?
Okay, so we like this one a lot, which is like prepare to go broad and then iterate. So we have a process where we develop, we used to do sound, play sound, do sound mood boards we do on some project, but we love storytelling, and I come from a lot of Olympics and a lot of psychology, but we create these metaphors and these sonic soundscapes. So it's long form, and it shows a lot of colors and textures and what kind of this world, this big Crayola box of unique sounds representing this brand could sound and feel like, and then draw from that. So we start there, and then we have a lot to choose from, and we explore, and things grow from those conversations. And that's how we get to these points where there's those moments that we're like, that's it, that you know it when you have it.
Okay. The fifth one is think about the environment that the sounds are in. I know Audio Brain works on everything from speakers to cruise ships. Our sounds are appearing in large metal boxes that aren't well known throughout history as being the best conductors for sound and audio. So they actually came in and helped us fine-tune those sounds for the locations that they would be in.
Which is extremely challenging of a lot of the things we do, and we'll do like Logitech Ultimate Ears and things like that. But when you're doing large appliances, the optimization process is pretty involved, but it's very important to the end user experience. So you got to know that environment that you're working in and make sure you're optimized to it. And you may have to optimize across a variety of different devices. And finally, last is just develop a strategy. And you can do that whether you're startup, whether you're the CMO at a company. Make sure that you're not doing anything that's disposable, that you're doing things that are intentional with every sound that you're making, every time that you're playing, when you're having an event, what Pete is with his room warming. Just make sure that you're doing intentional work and that it's not disposable, and that you're starting to put your narrative out there, and people will start to associate that with you, and it'll resonate, and it'll catch them emotionally. I see a lot of really gigantic changes in voice first, sound first industries. I think it's a fantastic time to be in this. It's taken a long time to get there, but there's probably no better time to be in it than right now. So thank you all for being here. And if you have any questions, just reach out, and we love to hear from you. And there's no pun intended in that. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Audrey and Brandon. Thank you so much. Thank you, Brandon. All right, see you at the party. Okay, all right. Our next speaker, I watched him, he has a talk, I think it's a TED Talk on YouTube. It's fantastic. This company, What 3 Words, has radically changed the way that we can view the world. And an address, I'm not going to steal his thunder, but I will bring up Chris Sheldrick, who is the co-founder and CEO of What 3 Words. Chris, come on up. We really look forward to your presentation. Let's give it up for Chris Sheldrick.
Hey, everybody. Hey. So I would like to talk about addresses. Addresses like number 43 Market Street, those kind of addresses. I would love to start by thinking that addresses were made a very long time ago for something very different. They were invented in like the 1600s to sort and deliver mail. Nobody ever thought about talking to an Alexa device with an address when they made it. And so they do not actually work amazingly. So for example, you have an address for this stadium. It points you to the center circle, which is pretty much not useful for anybody who wants to visit this stadium. You've got 24 car parks, a bunch of loading bays, yet the address points you to the middle, and you need some alternatives. If we're going to start making cars autonomous with no steering wheels and no controls, and today when the car says you've arrived, and then you kind of go, oh, I've sort of arrived, it's around the back or around the side. What are we going to do if the address points us to the middle of nowhere? We're just kind of stuck on the road. What are we going to do for drones when they need to deliver? Because we need somewhere precise. Is it the back garden, the front garden? Because the address kind of points to you on the roof, which is not useful. But that's okay because addresses were not made for drones. Also, you probably wouldn't make duplicate addresses. So in London, where I live, we have 14 roads all called Church Road. We have 30 roads called Victoria Road. In Mexico City, you've got 632 roads called Juarez. And this is what happens if you actually we kind of put your church road problem into a car. This is kind of how it goes.
Hey, Mercedes.
Yes, please.
Take me to Church Road, London.
Select an entry, please.
Church Road, Church Road, Church Road. I think we can scroll a bit. Yep, Church Road, London,
What do you
Church
want to
Road,
do?
London. So there are many church roads in London, and this is the current user experience we have to contend with when we're hacking voice to work with addresses, because it just wasn't imagined this way. We love Mercedes. This is not Mercedes' fault. Mercedes and everybody else has to deal with this issue. Also, places that we go which don't have an address will probably never have an address. If you go camping, this spot here does not have an address that we can put into a device. And then a lot of the emerging markets in the world, they've never really developed address systems outside of the kind of capital city in the middle. People just get by doing other things, round the side, round the back, near the tree, and it is not sort of set up for a voice-enabled world. There's when we are traveling into other countries, and personally I cannot write in this language. I don't have the keys on my keyboard, and we're in a very global world, but addresses are very localized, and it can be awkward to get around. Yet, when you ask people what they actually want their voice assistant to do in their car, the most popular option is actually navigation. Above all of the other things that you may want it to do, people fundamentally, when they get in their car, just want to go from A to B. And then we've got issues like if you're in Germany, it can be very distressing if you speak German or if you speak any other language to actually get this whole address spoken. I don't know if people know how to pronounce this place in the UK. If anyone's been here, you might think it's pronounced Beaulieu. It is not. It is pronounced Bewley. And so what is, you have to kind of program this or not program this for every car, and it cannot understand what you are saying. This is a road, don't know if anyone knows, in California, if anyone's been here. Does anyone know how to pronounce it? I do not. You do? Yeah, you call it ZZYZX. Okay, ZZYZX, okay, cool. So I don't know how the voice assistant's actually going to process this, but probably not very well. And then you've got homophones, which are things we have to think about in voice. So in London, you've got Lawn Road, L-A-W-N, and Lawn Road, L-O-R-N-E. They are not next to each other, and it can be confusing if you talk to a voice assistant that thinks they are the same. If I say 241st Street, do I mean 241st Street? Do I mean 241st Street? Or 241st Street? Triple homophone, and you will run into plenty of issues if you're trying to get this and talk to your car. Don't know if people know about the Icelandic issue where the tourist went to Laugavegor instead of Laugavegor. The top one has an extra R, and he drove 4 hours and 45 minutes in the wrong direction and discovered the problem. Very distressing, again, for voice issues. So, okay, why do I personally care so much about addresses and have such a problem with them? So 2 reasons. 1, I live in the countryside in the UK. I have a house name, no house number, and we never get our mail. In fact, if you put my postcode in, which is what we use, you will get brought to this cow, because we live in a rural area, not to my house. And every delivery driver that we have goes to the cow, and they call our house, and they say, I'm by the cow. And we have this process. So I do not like addresses. I then went and worked for 10 years in the music business. And I don't know if people know about the music business. People get lost a lot every day in the music business, just trying to find where they're going. So I was the guy who coordinated people to get to the stage door. If this was the stage, the door would be around there, and the drummer would have loaded in over there, the bass player would have loaded in through the door here, and I just wanted people in the door here. So I tried to enforce on the London music business the use of latitude and longitude, GPS coordinates. I thought this was the solution. I said to everyone, please can you just type in a latitude, longitude, the degrees button, and you will arrive in exactly the right place. Turns out, in theory, this is great. In practice, London musicians are incredibly bad at using latitude and longitude. People like mixed up the 4 and the 5, arrive now north of Rome, not now south of Rome. And they said to me, where's the degrees button? So I thought, well, what ideally we need to do is think of an easier way of communicating latitude and longitude. So, chatted to a friend, we came up with this idea that if you take the world You overlay a grid of 3 meters by 3 meters, and you can name each single square, 3 meter square in the world, the unique combination of 3 words instead of latitude and longitude. Does that make sense? So this square here is pirates, tigers, quiet. If you move to the next square, it might be table, chair, spoon. And there's 57 trillion 3 meter squares in the world. Turns out there's about 57 trillion combinations of 3 words. So the maths kind of lines up. So this, to me, makes way more sense, and it happens to be optimized for voice because this is very easy to say. Made, and this is what our tech does. We take the latitudes and longitudes for every 3 meter square in the world, we turn them into 3 words, and that is it. And if you, because we've pre-assigned all the 3 words for every 3 meters, it means that your house, in your office, has already got 3 words. So you can download the What 3 Words app, you can find out what it is, and literally you'll click on the squares, that's comic force trucks, that squares words, books, sand, and you can just click square by square, and it will show you the 3 words. So your front door's got 3 words, your back door has got 3 words. They are fixed forever, you cannot change them. But you can just get the What 3 Words app and find out what they are. So if you sort of come into our world of 3 words for 3 meters, it means that now the precise entrance for that big tower block, you can actually use saying actor, asking, print, and it won't give you the middle. Back to the stadium, well, actually now you've got 3 words for every single entrance, which makes my loading bay for my musicians much, much easier if I just give them the 3 words. Even in Iceland, the bit around there where you might put your tent up, movers, fuses, paintbrush. Now, outside of the What 3 Words app, we don't actually want to build an app. What we want to build is a system that is in everybody else's app. In fact, our desire, our mission is to delete our app from the App Store because we want to be available in absolutely everything else. So we started with this idea, and we got integrated into a few. This one's called TripGo, where you can actually put the 3 words into the destination search bar and use it just like you would a normal address. But it kind of took us a while to get going. And what then came next was slightly not on our first business plan. I actually got invited to go to Mongolia, where there are not many addresses around. And I was shown the inside of a Mongolian home, and I was also told about the problem for the Mongolian Postal Service is that this is the outside of a Mongolian home, and they find it very distressing to deliver mail in the rural areas in places like this. So we gave them the system with 3 words, and we now have 3 Mongolian words as well, so that it is, of course, in the local language and people can use it. So this was the first sort of big deal we did, the Mongolian Postal Service. We then gave them text so that they can, with iPads, you can pass an envelope underneath the iPad. It scans the 3 words, and it will tell you where to go. And even in the capital, Ulaanbaatar, you've now got a lot of cafes. They kind of embrace the tech a lot, and they put the 3 words, like you would a TripAdvisor sign, on your window. Even the Lonely Planet guide, if people know Planet, to Mongolia now, you can see in the bottom right, I think it says there, seeping, expanding defensively. Every single place in that book, Lonely Planet, have now added the 3 words, so you can get around, which is pretty cool. So we started there, but now we've come kind of full circle and doing a lot more back in the UK and around the world. So we're partnering with many different companies. In the UK, we've done a lot of work with emergency call-up 911 in the UK. They don't know where you are. They did a big campaign over this summer, and we actually got to #1 in the App Store, even above WhatsApp and Instagram, because they said, have this app on your phone so that if you call 911, you can tell them where you are and not sort of, I've injured myself in the forest near the grassy bit, and the other stuff that we have to get by on. Which is phenomenal. Even Domino's Pizza are using us in the Caribbean, in the Middle East, for places where they struggle with addresses, and they kind of encourage people to give the 3-word address when they order, because people get annoyed if the pizza gets cold. I'm sure everyone can relate. In South Korea, if there's anyone from South Korea, we are integrated into Kakao Map, thank you very much. And people don't really use Google Maps there, they use Kakao Map and a couple of others. We're now integrated into that, so you can use us in your normal app. This is a ride-hailing app called Cabify. It's big in South America. This is actually, I think, our Japanese version in Barcelona, quite a niche case. But you can use in any language you want, wherever you want, to order a ride. But the people actually investing into what 3 words are actually people who are involved in mobility. So this is a section of our investors. You've got Mercedes-Benz, Sony. Don't know if people saw 2 days ago, Sony launched their first car here at CES. Deutsche Bahn, the German railway system. Subaru, Intel, SAIC, big car company in China. But these companies are very interested in the next generation of how we communicate location to devices. And so back to voice and how this works for voice. We are now installed into the Mercedes, we called it earlier, the Hey Mercedes or the MBUX infotainment system, so that you can just speak your 3 words to your car and it will navigate you to that 3 meter square. And it works like this.
Hey Mercedes.
How may I help you?
What 3 words? Glass, keys, rooftop.
Select an entry, please.
Number 1.
The route is being calculated. Please follow the road for 700 meters.
And it's that straightforward. You literally get into your car, glass, keys, rooftop, and it will then direct you to your destination. Much easier than having to scroll through the list and take out all of the kind of duplicate street names. And we do this in actually 37 different languages so far. This is not an English-only system. You can use whichever language you want to use wherever you are in the world. So if I go to Seoul in Korea, I don't speak Korean, I can use the English version. Similarly, Korean people can use the Korean version in Las Vegas. Totally up to you which version you use anywhere. And people say, what do we do with homophones, those words which sound exactly the same but have different spellings, like here, H-E-A-R, here, H-E-R-E? Well, we actually take those out of our word list. So in every language that we prepare, we have this very, very long manual process where we go through the dictionary, we vote on each word that we're going to use, we use local language-based specialists, and we take out those words that sound the same. And then for the sort of similar sounding combinations of words, people say to us, why don't you put them near each other? Because that's what we do, right? We put similar things near each other. We decided to do the total opposite. We wanted to put table, chair, lamps in New York, table, chair, lamp in Sydney, so that if your voice assistant is not sure which one you said, and you're in New York, it's pretty clear that you probably wanted to go in New York, not Sydney. I don't know why more people don't do this, but we basically designed our whole system around the fact that voice recognition is naturally not perfect, so let's help it. And what this means is, if you then, if you type 3 words into our app, or you speak 3 words, let's say you're in Japan, it's pretty clear. Impact, interest, tactical is 300 meters away. Impact, intense, tactical is 7,000 kilometers away, and it kind of helps you. You're like, I think I'm in number 1. And so we've now gone on to make some other stuff for voice with Alexa, and I was going to try and demo it. For whatever reason, Alexa is not cooperating on my phone, so I have a backup, which is a video of me using my Alexa skill. And it basically means you can order an Uber to and from a 3-word address, as we call it. Because in the Uber Alexa skill, you can only use home and office, I think, at the moment. They don't actually support street addresses. So we've made one where you can go literally to anywhere from anywhere. Alexa, ask 3-word Go to order me a ride from Filled Count Soap to Index Home Raft.
Okay, I found Index Home Raft near Bayswater and Filled Count Soap near Bayswater. Should I get an estimate from Uber?
And it works like that. It's very straightforward. You don't need to hear me to finish it. But you can do exactly that, and you can book it. But that is very straightforward to do using our API. So that's kind of the point, is don't use our app, use our API. Build stuff with the What 3 Words API. We built that very quickly so that you can just book an Uber to and from places, and people are doing lots of the same stuff. We've in fact just launched the What 3 Words Voice API this week, powered by a speech recognition company in the UK called Speechmatics. And what this lets you do all through our API is actually do the ASR as well, the speech recognition. So you can stream audio to our API, you can get back the 3 words and the coordinates, because it can be complicated to go, well, I'll get the audio from another company, we'll put the What 3 Words bit on. We thought, let's make it easy. We've put it all together. Is that my timer? No. So it is kind of timely. So the very last thing I wanted to do is just share a video about all of the things we're doing around voice. And then straight afterwards, if you want to hear any more about What 3 Words, we have a booth just right there at the back. And do come and have a chat. This is us and voice.
Diamond Voter Asset.
Order me a ride to Splash Forgot Crew.
Tell Luck Driven.
We have integrated what 3 words. A unique 3-word combination makes it easy to navigate to any location.
Hey Mercedes?
Yes, please.
Take me to what 3 words? Hello, page, brand.
Please select an entry.
Number 1. Start route guidance.
Route guidance is starting.
Männer blocken Akten.
Die Zeilennummer bitte. 你好，
少男规范底薪。
请选择一条记录。
Get confirmed types, paces, jump.
Thank you very much. That is what 3 words. Please come and see us at the back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. All right. Come on up. Let's go, Imrich. Let's have this conversation. Come on up. All right. So what's fun about what I do as a community builder is I get to spot things very early sometimes, what's happening in the market, or people reach out to me. And I'm always very happy when startup founders reach out to me and said, hey, we're trying to get our name out there. Do you have recommendations? It's very fun for me because I've been doing this for 10 years, know a lot of investors, know a lot of people. And when I see something I think is unique, it's fun to give people an opportunity to be heard. And I think that first off, it requires people to reach out and ask. So I really want to give Imrich and his team credit for reaching out. And we're going to talk a little bit about his company and what he's doing, because I think it's fascinating, especially as we're in this new audio explosion and voice-first world. Imrich, welcome.
Yep.
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
me. Thanks.
So, all right. So tell us, first off, tell us about Sentient and what you're up to.
Yeah. So what we are doing the first audio headset that you can wear all day, and it doesn't block your ears, right? So think about it like smart glasses for your ears. And the whole idea came from the fact, and when I was at the university, and I was thinking about the biggest challenges that we are going to face, human-computer interaction was the number 1, for sure, because I think there is a great potential. And therefore, I started to study human-computer interaction history, computer science, etc. And I mean, the best thing would be if we think about something and it's done, but we are not there yet, unfortunately. And we are not there yet with smart glasses as well. So we settled down for audio. And what we did is that you wear a headset that doesn't block your ears. And it translates, it gives audio a layer on top of the real world.
Okay, so did you catch that? A headset that doesn't go in your ears. How many have an pair of AirPods? Or something similar, another bud device that goes in your ear, right? So do you have a prototype you can pull out?
I'm wearing it, actually.
Oh, there it is.
No.
Okay, so you see that?
Yeah.
It goes in front of the ear. So now, how does that work then? Because if it's in front of my ear, am I going to be able to hear the sound? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so it uses bone conduction. So it goes directly in your inner ear. It bypasses the eardrum. And therefore, you can even plug your ears and still hear the sound.
All right.
Yeah.
I want.
Yeah.
So tell us about where you are with regards to the product development and getting the product out to market.
Yeah. So we opened a pre-order recently, and we have an early bird price for you all for the first batch. And we are testing multiple prototypes. We have a working prototype that we are testing internally. This is a looks-like prototype, so this is how it's going to look like. And yeah, we are shipping in summer 2020. And go to sentienthq.com.
Sentien, Sentien, HQ.com. And you said there's a kind of a beta customer special you guys are running?
Yeah, exactly. Early bird price is the first batch is limited, so if you want to grab one, go and pre-order it. Yeah.
So I think this is interesting because we are kind of in this era of always on audio, right? So you see people walking around now. It's funny when I travel and going through airports, how many people have a device in their ear, just don't even take them out. But I mean, as a user, I can understand it's a little annoying. Sometimes you just feel like you got to take it out and talk to somebody. But with this device sitting here in front of the ear, suddenly we've solved that challenge.
Exactly, and it also solves a lot of problems that previous speakers talked about, because this device is 100% personal, you know. So when you are talking to your bank or whoever else, it's just for you. It's always accessible, so it's always here. When the guys from Google were talking about the fact that in the app you have the big microphone button, you know, it's right here. It's always here. So that's what we are working with, and then it's 100% user configurable. It's 100% in your control. So if you don't want to have something played in the headset, it doesn't play, because we are also making an app that you can configure the headset totally.
So with the big companies, Apple with AirPod and AirPod Pro, with Amazon and the Echo Buds, Samsung, the list goes on now, companies. Is there room for a startup in this space to compete?
Yeah, I think definitely there is. And that's also the reason why we started doing the hardware, because at first we wanted to do software only.
Yep.
But then the seamless experience was not there, as you mentioned, taking out the AirPod or being close to your smart speaker. It just doesn't work, you know? So we want to have this experience that you wake up in the morning, you put on the headset, and you take it out in the evening, like your wristwatch, let's say.
Right,
Yeah.
like a wristwatch. Fascinating. Yeah. So right now the plan is to roll out in summer 2020. And do you have, is this certain geographies, Europe, US, globally? What's the plan?
Yeah, for now we are shipping to the US and European Union. And then we will open up internationally.
Okay. Will you be at the party at the reception after this,
oh, yeah,
so people can see this device? How many want to see this? Pretty amazing. I mean, I have been using this in earbuds for over a year now, and I can attest that I think it's really interesting to think about something that's not in, but on. And
yeah, I think.
Excellent. Well, Imrich, thank you so much. Let's give it up for Imrich Selacek with Sentien. All right. And he will be demonstrating these at the party. It's going to be fun. All right, so this brings us down. Where's Katie? Katie McMahon, are you in the room? Katie, you in the room? All right, okay. Lost Katie. Not to fear, though. So I asked Brett Kinsella with VoiceBot to close this out today. And the reason I asked Brett is this man has had his finger on me really since it started. I talked to him about, how did you start covering voice? And he said, because when I started to pay attention to what was going on with Alexa, I noticed nobody was really covering the space yet. Somebody needed to cover this space. He just jumped in and started doing it. Started doing the research, asking the questions, and then presenting that back to the industry. And suddenly today, here 3 years later, VoiceBot has become an indispensable part of our industry. How many go to voicebot.ai to see what's going on? Right. How many of the big companies now realize they have to get their information to voicebot.ai first in order for it to be validated? So I asked Brett to leave us with some parting thoughts today. Voice with 2020 hindsight, very, very appropriately named. Give it up for Brett Kinsella. Thank you, Brett.
Okay, so we're going to move fast. I'm going to try to keep a little bit of time for questions. I think people probably want to go and eat or drink or take a nap or something. But I do want to cover a few things about what I think are really going to be interesting, not only over the next year, but over the next decade. And I'm going to take this from a brand perspective. And I was thinking about it. I know there's a lot of people in the industry here today, and there's a number of brands as well. But what I do understand is almost everybody here is either a brand or enterprise, or they're working with a brand or enterprise. So I want to give the perspective of how I talk to brands or enterprises about what I think is happening in this space based on all the information you all have given me. Right? So between consumer surveys and the conversations with you, that's where I've come up with a lot of these findings. And so that's where we come in to the 2020 with a little bit of hindsight. For those of you who don't know us, we do lots of things. There's a podcast. You can find me on the Twitter there. And so, I recommend you do that. All right. So let's talk about something that very few people pay much attention to or enough attention to. There's lots of voice assistants out there. They're across multiple surfaces. This data is as of end of September, so end of Q3 2019, and this is US. So we'll just talk about US first. And we see smart speakers at the bottom, much smaller in terms of total usage, trial, than the other surfaces. So if you're a brand and you're thinking about this, you need to be thinking about surfaces beyond the smart speaker. You need to think particular about the car and around the phone. And the phone is an extension, I would say, the earbuds. We had a really interesting presentation just now. You need to do that. Now, the one other thing I'll point out here, we've got two things. The first bar is how many people have tried it. And you see there's twice as many people who have tried voice on a smartphone as they've tried it on a smart speaker. However, when you look at monthly active users, it's actually much narrower in terms of the difference. Monthly active users on smartphones are only about 50% higher than on smart speakers, and you're going to see that continue to come down before it expands, because we're going to start seeing voice assistants on smartphones really expand significantly. And that's one of the key trends to start to think about over the next year or two. If you are a brand and you're going to have a voice strategy, you have to have a mobile strategy. And mobile here is the phone, it's the earbuds, it's the watch, devices around your peripheral, and it's the car. These are global numbers. So the other thing is we're approaching 3 billion voice assistants out there. One of the things that kills most technologies, AR, VR, for example, if anybody's heard of those. We've been hearing about those for years. They have not had distribution, right? Voice assistants have distribution. That's a really important thing. And we also heard from Google this week that they have 500 million monthly active users. So this isn't just pre-installed. There's actually people starting to use this, and that goes back to that last conversation, or that last point I just made. You better start thinking about mobile. A lot of those 500 million are actually on mobile. But what does this mean ultimately? Microphones are everywhere. So as a brand, what is your strategy to take advantage of microphones? And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So we're going to talk about the voice assistant landscape. And a few people don't understand, I think, how broad this landscape is. So I have this really simple little framework that I like to show people. We talk about Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri, Bixby. That's the general purpose voice assistant space, the consumer voice assistant space. But as you can see, it's not the whole landscape. And so I have some descriptors here. Is it platform controlled, enterprise controlled, broad scope, narrow feature scope? I don't need to get into a lot of that at the moment, but you have this understanding that there's a lot of different applications and a lot of different ways people are going to interact with voice. So I name these other three quadrants: niche, owned, and white label. And in niche, we've got these things. If you think about it, they're like a voice assistant, but they're for a very specific thing. VOICE just got purchased a few months ago by Cisco, and that they capture all of your meeting content, and then there's an assistant that actually takes notes for you and those types of things. And Aider AI, they do all your back office for small businesses. So that's a niche. They're a lot like the Amazon Alexa. Aider is like the Amazon Alexa if you're a small business and you need back office, right? And you need to be able to talk to it. But then on the bottom, we have all these things, which I would just categorize in the bottom left and the bottom right is your custom voice assistant landscape. And this is going to be important because I'm going to talk to you about what that actually means. On the left, think about if you're building your own. Those are the people who have put all the components together. Now, they haven't built all the components themselves. They've sourced them, but they've really had to do a lot of work. They've basically got unfinished products, integrated them together to make it work. And then on the lower right, you have all of the white label solutions. SoundHound's a good example of it. They're in the back today. And what they do is they provide you with most of what you need, and then you do mostly configuring. Okay? And so that's a faster way to market. Cerence and Nuance have been big on this in different areas. Houndify, and there's a few others. Microsoft Bot Framework is the one in the lower right. Okay, what does this mean? In the top, if you're a brand, you should think about those as channels. So here's an analogy. A few years ago, Facebook, Twitter, Subsequently, Snap, Instagram became popular. And brands didn't control those, but they recognized that those organizations had amassed large consumer audiences. So all of a sudden, they developed strategies for each of those, because these are their channels in order to reach these different reach consumers at a time when they're doing something that might be relevant to their value proposition, right? So you ignore social media at your channel, at your peril, and you ignore, as a brand or an enterprise, you ignore Alexa and Google Assistant and some of these other players also at your peril. So that's one of the things you have to see. There is such widespread adoption that you need to think about that as part of your strategy. On the lower level, you think about these custom assistants. That's about capabilities. That's about extending your product experience. And a really good example of this is Bank of America. So some people have talked about this. I'm the only ones reported on this. They've said they spent $60 million over 2 years. It seems like a lot of money. It seems like it's out of reach for brands. But if you look at someone like Bank of America, they did it all on their own. So they did the most expensive way they could. They went in the route that would, they are in an industry where regulation and the lawyers determine a lot of things, but still, they spent that. 8 million users. That's about a third of all the users of the Bank of America app in the US have actually tried it, so pretty good trial rate. They've got 500,000 to 1 million MAUs. And so if you think about the cost for them, if they just like reduce one call to their call center a year, they've probably paid for this, right, for all of their users. So you start to think about it, there's a pretty good value proposition for that. The other thing is they're really extending the product and service experience. So today, there's only a certain amount of things you can do, and what they're doing is they're expanding beyond that. And one of the big things they saw, and you see this at Capital One as well, they have so much in their mobile app, consumers can't find it. They don't know what's there, they don't know how to get to it. What do they wind up doing? We heard it earlier, millennials, they make a phone call, right? Because who wants to go through and search and type it all in? It's a lot easier to make a phone call, except for if you've got Eno or Erica or something like that, you can just ask them. And they see time and again that this makes a big difference. Now, they're not the only ones. We've seen a lot about Mercedes. I won't go into great detail on this, but again, we're talking about being able to control that user experience, be able to extend the cabin experience for drivers. That's something that Mercedes, BMW, a lot of the big players do not want to cede to some other organization. Whether they feel good or bad about Amazon or Samsung, it doesn't really matter. They know that they have a specific type of product experience they want to enable, and that's why they're doing this. So Stanley Black & Decker has Priya, in the healthcare space. Again, an assistant that will recognize a person, will dispense their drugs for them, will be able to report back to loved ones and caretakers that medications have actually been taken. So you think about Stanley Healthcare, they were doing cabinets in hospitals. Now they're essentially doing a medication cabinet in the home, right? But yet it has all these other capabilities where they can interact and they can create a bond with the user. They can provide more social and emotional support beyond just the transaction. So again, there's a lot going on here. And then we think about Jingo and Magenta, and Raghu's here from Deutsche Telekom's. I didn't know he was here. I was very thrilled to meet him today. What did they want to do? They wanted to create a better Deutsche Telekom experience. The same thing with Orange in France. They didn't want to just say, I'll take what Google or Amazon gives me. There's certain types of things, there's certain features that I want to enable so that I can extend my product experience. And that led them to building their own smart speaker, and I understand it's going well. And they also use Alexa for all the things that they're not going to do, but for their product experience, things that Alexa or Google were never going to do for them, they're able to do that now, and to be able to leverage voice as an interaction mechanism, particularly for someone in the home who's providing television and entertainment services, who's providing telecom services. This is a really useful product extension for them. And we see other telecoms doing this too. Aura is Telefonica's solution as well, and we see SK Telecom and KT in Korea, South Korea. So we're seeing this over and over again in terms of these private assistants. And then a lot of people were really surprised that BBC, who has been among the earliest and most aggressive adopters on some of the consumer platforms that we saw in the upper right-hand corner. You all know how to think about this market now. But they said, you know what, we're going to actually build our own assistant called the Beeb, and it's going to help us with media search, and we're going to be able to tailor the experience, and we're going to enable it on the web, on mobile and other places, and they expect to roll that out this year. Okay, so what I tell people is Amazon and Google just showed brands how valuable it is to have a voice assistant relationship with a consumer, right? They're investing a lot in it because they understand there's a lot of benefit, and brands and enterprises have the exact same opportunity in front of them with this. And it's a lot easier than it used to be because we have some of those white label solutions, because the maturity of some of the individual tools are better. You don't anymore. You can do this actually at a pretty reasonable budget. And think about it as part of your product. Don't think about it as part of necessarily just your marketing. So for people who are doing these things, I also want to point ahead and let you know where you're headed. So Amazon, Alexa, Google Assistant, they moved on from this voice interface. And by the way, I think a lot of brands should be doing these things, just like this voice interface. Can I make it easier to navigate things that I have? But this assistant is really this much more robust experience, this much deeper level of connection and value to customers. But they're also moving on to these concepts of virtual agents. Dan Miller likes to talk about this, Opus Research, so I like to look at his material from time to time. Google Duplex, a perfect example of virtual agent. A virtual agent, any of these types of things, we talk about agency for voice assistants. That means they can do things on your behalf without your explicit request, okay? So that's one of the things that we're heading for with these devices. You see Ring Doorbell with the Doorbell Concierge. People are gonna come to your front door, and Alexa's going to have a conversation with them. You're not even home. They'll tell the person where to put the package. They'll take a message. All these other types of things. They're doing things for you. So right now, voice assistants are about request response. Request response. You have to be there. You have to ask for it. Now you'll be able to basically set these things up, and they will go out and they will do things for you when you're not there. And we even saw this, we saw a new one. So you can tell how people are thinking about this right now in the industry and how important they think it are. This is Samsung Bali, for those of you who haven't seen it. I think most people here probably have heard about it because it's one of the more interesting things out there. I don't know if this will be successful. I'm a bit of a skeptic on robots in general, but this one I thought was a little more interesting than things like Jibo, which actually they look cool. The anthropomorphism is really great, but this thing actually could be really useful. And one of the key aspects of it that they showed was agency. They showed it doing things in your home when you're not there to make the home better when you arrive, right? So you don't have to do anything about it. So I like to point that out to people. The other thing, since we're at CES, and CES is truly a global conference, I just wanted to point out a couple quick things, just so everyone in this room has this in top of mind. We talk a lot about the global consumer voice assistants, so you'll know where they are and the types in the countries that they serve in terms of languages. But we have also these regional voice assistants that are really coming into their own, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I was having a conversation earlier today with someone about whether it would be one assistant or many assistants. I've always been in the many assistants category, so there's some people in the market like Jeff Bezos who's always been in that. There's other people like Adam Chyer who's always been in the one assistant market. My view is that we're going to have many assistants, and if you've read Voice Insider, my newsletter, you'll know that I think of voice assistants today as like apps. Voice assistants are going to be the new apps. And we're going to use multiple of them just like we use multiple apps. That might evolve over time, but that's where we're heading in the next 4 to 5 years. So there's lots of other players. They tend to be regionally or country focused. If you are a global enterprise, you should be thinking about that, right? Because these are other channels that are going to be successful because of their cultural focus and alignment in a way that the general voice assistants won't get to eventually because they don't do that language or they're not as focused on a specific type of domain or interaction. And so then you've got the whole landscape, and then I'm just going to finish this up. Troughs and backlash. So there's been a lot of talk about privacy. Is that hurting the industry? There's been talk about consumers aren't adopting voice apps and Alexa skills as quickly as I would like. And so there's this thought of this trough of disillusionment. If you're not familiar with this is the Gartner hype cycle where new technologies come in. Everyone's really excited about them. Oh, the potential, but then they overhype it. And then all of a sudden you can't meet the expectations. And then all of a sudden everyone says, oh, this is terrible. Everyone was a moron. This will never go anywhere. But then usually what happens, if it's not VR, it comes out of the trough of disillusionment, and then it goes up to this plateau of productivity. In other words, people figure out ways that they can use it, and it's where we should have been. We should have had this technology trigger and gone, you know, nice little thing, but this is the way it generally works because we're humans and we think we make decisions logically, but we don't. We make them emotionally, and eventually we figure it out. Okay, so there's a lot of question about, hey, have things like the concerns around privacy, have they impacted voice adoption? And I'll say, maybe. So in January 2019, I saw that of people that we've surveyed, this is 1,000 people in the US. This is just US. There's going to be a different answer, I think, if you go to Germany, if you go to the UK. But of the people who was very concerned about voice assistant and privacy, it was 26% in January, it was 29.5% in September. So it rose. But it did not rise as much as you might think based on the headlines that we saw. So what happened this year? Amazon contractors shared transcripts of interactions with Alexa. Siri contractor did the same thing. Google Assistant, Line, if anyone knows Line from Asia, same thing happened. Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, everyone got nailed over a 4-month period, and it went up 3%, okay? So to me, that's interesting, right? Because there was more attention paid to it, so people are starting to think, hey, maybe I should be very concerned about this. But as we heard from Tom this morning, and my data as well, shows just a little bit difference. If you're very concerned, you're still going to buy a smart speaker, you're still going to use a voice assistant. So I'm not sure that that's a big deal. And after this all came out, so Q3 numbers, Amazon had its best non-Q4, so 1 through 3, quarter ever. Right? They did 10 million smart speakers globally in that quarter. So despite the fact that in April, people said, Alexa is listening to your conversations, aren't you concerned about your privacy? They wound up having, the next quarter wound up being their best non-Q4 quarter, right? Because Q4 is holiday, it's a whole different deal. But they did well. And so we're not seeing yet data that's saying, hey, consumers are stepping off the gas, right? All right, so the other thing is if you are a brand, if you can say, hey, I don't think the privacy thing is going to derail this, but what are other people doing in this space? Other people like big brands who are forward leaders in their segments, they're spending a lot of money in this space. They really have committed to it because they're starting to see benefit. And so I'll point one out. Does anybody know how many Echo Autos nationwide has committed to distributing to their customers? 1 million. So that's a great quarter for Amazon anytime that comes out. But they said, listen, people are in the car. I want them to be able to interact with the app. I want them to take advantage of my services. I'm going to put those out. And so that's something that's really interesting. That's I'm sure they're buying a volume. That's a $50 item, right? So let's say they got it in bulk. That's $25 million that they've decided to spend in order to have a greater experience. But then we have Mercedes, which you guys heard from. We have Starbucks, which is big on voice commerce. We have Orange and Deutsche Telekom. We have BBC. People are saying, hey, this is the new platform. And there's a whole nother talk I give about platform shifts and things like that. You can go to Harvard Business Review and you can see basically the summary of that. And I think you'll find that interesting if you want to understand the historical context. But if you want to think about right now what's happening, there's a lot of people using voice. There's great distribution. They're increasing their frequency of use. And the people who are actually leaders in technology adoption that helps drive business are spending a lot of money. Okay, so let's finish up. Recommendations for brands. I tell them not to be silent. Because if you're silent, then there is no opportunity for you to be in a conversation. Your best chance is that the voice assistant takes you takes the consumer to Wikipedia. Very often, they take the consumer to one of your brand competitors or something else, or say they don't know the answer, and you've lost that moment. So I do this whole thing around moments. People who've been through my voice strategy sessions know this. Owning that moment, you can't own it if you're silent. So don't be silent. You need to have a strategy here. And when you think about the strategy, I tell people you need to think portfolio. You can't just think smart speaker. You shouldn't just think phone. You shouldn't just think car. You should think about all of the above because this is the way things are going. You need to be on mobile, you need to be on the web, you need to be on voice, and you need to have an experience that makes sense. And more, you need to be able to do these multimodal interactions. The phone is a good example. So that it's not voice only, it's voice plus, and you need to be prepared for that going forward. And I do really stress this idea of being multimodal and being mobile when you think about your voice strategy. And the other thing is, go ahead and build your own assistant. In fact, in 2020, start to spec out what your objectives are. Maybe design it if you're an early adopter. If you're not, at least set your objectives so that in 2021, 2022, you're not left behind. If you haven't seen voicebot.ai, check out /research on our site. That's how you find me on social. And the Voice Insider newsletter, I think a lot of people in this room would probably get a lot out of. It's where we talk about the things that aren't just news. It's not a long-form interview. It's about the things, the information, the topics that we're talking about today that are like deep in, if you're in the industry and really want to understand what's going on, then that's a place to get that. And that is Voice with 2020 hindsight.
Thank you, Brett. Wow. A lot of great information there, sir. Thank you so much. You coming to the party?
I will be.
Okay, good. All right. Well, let's give it up one more time for all of our speakers today. Let's give it up for the speakers. Amazing content today. Let's give it up for the sponsors across the back of the room who've been hanging out with us all day. Thank you, sponsors. Yes, we can't do it without them. I also want to thank the staff who worked so hard to make all of this happen. Many of them have already gone over to the reception, so maybe I should have thanked them earlier in the day. But I do have a little secret. The secret is this. It's Kayla Gall's birthday. Kayla is like our go-to person that makes it all happen. Yes. So we ordered a little cake, and we'll be singing happy birthday to her at the reception. So I definitely hope you can come over and join us there. I have a little instructions here with how to get there. So the event is at the Juniper Lounge at the Park MGM Hotel. You can follow some signs to get there, but let me, Adam has done this walk. So I'm just going to announce it, how to get over there. I'm at the lounge right now, setting down to the second floor of the conference center at the Aria. I know, exactly, right? We should just, 3 words it? That would have been a good trick. Let's see. Walk past the area where they search bags, and then to Voice. From the main stage to our breakout sessions to the expo hall. I think we had more than 500 companies speaking at this conference. It has become the place where the global voice-first communities are coming together.
There's just so many affordances that speech give us. It's the first time in my life that my kids are just as excited and up to speed on the tech as my parents, right?
This would reduce your balance to about $15,000.
That is the experience you want to have when you introduce conversational AI.
2019 sales to date are up 2.1%.
How do you use voice and empathy and build that into an experience that's going to work in a healthcare context
from people who are developing gaming applications, and we learn from that. So the cross-industry pollination, very important and very helpful for us.
Coming back 1 year later and seeing how much this conference has grown, how many more women, frankly, I'm seeing in the space, has been really impactful to me personally. I think very valuable for Boom as a company to find so many great people to meet and potentially partner with.
The talent now better understand what it is that they need to do and how they can participate in this new world of voice first and AI.
The world is changing so fast. Voice, like augmented reality, virtual reality, this is going to be huge.
This is the inaugural Voice Summit Awards. This community is innovating at a pace that I don't think any industry has ever seen before. I want us to all give a round of applause for the people in this room that are changing the world. The thing I love most is watching all the connections, all the smiles, seeing all the tweets of people having a great time together.
My definition of voice is the ability to empower others. It's time to take this to another level where you and I can make an even bigger impact.
To the 5,000 people that came from more than 26 countries, 5 continents, every state in this union, from me to you, thank you very much.